Previously on Best Ball Breakfast. Bye week bros who are shaking in their boots because Dalton Kincaid and Tyler Conklin have the same bye week. The two quarterbacks playing in the same Week 17 game. Yes, I will be very happy to have that problem. I feel like if we have the Stafford Brock Purdy, let's get one guy who can score over 18 points. You recently outed yourself as a light mode.
I didn't expect the backlash the way that I've gotten the backlash.
I'm going to try it.
To the audience. Why is DeAndre Hopkins in his 12th year in the league still going in the middle rounds? Well, he's still freaking good.
I'm laughing at a stream draft dynamic when you start hyping a guy up. DeAndre Hopkins, I have not seen him at pick 51 once this year.
I know people are probably freaking out in chat about this current build. I've been in this. Yeah, there we go. JJ's dog burning house meme right now.
And today on Best Ball Breakfast, 4 more Best Ball Mania drafts as usual. Solo draft. Then we got one with Shawn Siegele from Rotoviz. Then one with the BBM3 champ, Pat Kerrane. And then our special guest today at 1 p.m. Eastern, none other than Adam Levitan from ETR. We will see if he gets buried in a wide receiver avalanche like JJ did last week. I'm Pete. This is Best Ball Breakfast. My slow draft rooms are so much different than my streamed drafts.
Does no one realize Underdog's half-point PPR? Idiots!
Damn, bro. You know ball. Hope you guys packed your bags. I packed my bags. No, I mean, I literally packed my bags. She kicked me.
Dude, Star Method's legit. Only way to max out every contest in the plus EV way. Week 17, you still gotta get there, bro.
We have a finite sample. We only have so much samples. Is it negative EV to stream all your drafts? We just don't know. GMs all around. Tyler kicking us off as usual with a gifted membership. Thank you, brother. Musty's ready for action-packed drafts. GMs. Yes, Merry Independence Monday, y'all. Yeah, Thursday is July 4th. Going to have a bit of an abbreviated week. Won't be having shows on Thursday, but the good times will be rolling here on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Tim says, Pete, I think it'd be fun if you tried a robust RB draft in just one BBM draft this year, just to see, just to experiment, just to see what it would feel like. Well, I got a treat for you, Tim. I have done robust RB drafts over on the Deposit Kingdom YouTube channel. I have done a few challenge drafts and multiple times started out with 3 early running backs. I've been doing those videos over there. And it's a little easier to pull off a hyperfragile or robust build in a quote unquote normal room. And so when I do the pre-recorded videos, I'm not getting buried in a wide receiver avalanche, but I did do a few challenges over there. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the Deposit Kingdom YouTube channel. The most recent one was a draft with Liam. We had a very fun time drafting a team last week. And then we kind of tried to essentially do the perfect draft with my guests. So first it was Kyle Dvorak from RotoWorld. Then it was Liam, and trying to basically accomplish all of their favorite things to do in drafts. And then we kind of break it down from a strategic standpoint. So if you like the idea of watching drafts, but don't have time for a 4-hour live stream, the Deposit Kingdom YouTube channel is the place to be. I should also mention I am in the lab on a video that will come out later this week, probably Wednesday evening. And the theme this week is looking at discounted players who could be league winners. And this is kind of aside from the cohort of rookies, more looking at players, whether it's because of suspension risk or injuries, are being discounted by the market, and then kind of going through on a case-by-case basis and determining how we should be playing these guys within our current draft. So keep an eye out for that video on the Deposit Kingdom channel later this week. It is going to be a good week. How are we doing? GM from Vegas sounds nice. Yeah, Brandon talking about the 30-second clocks. If you guys happen to miss this, I believe, was it over the weekend? I think it was over the weekend that Underdog launched 3 different mini schnauzers. No, this was Wednesday, because I remember we were live on Off and On the Clock with the Badge Bros, I think, when they launched this. But anyways, they had 3 different tournaments with shorter time clocks. There was a 10-second version of the mini schnauzer that already filled. Then there's a 15-second and a 20-second clock. And I know a lot of people had fun hopping in there, seeing what the, shortened time clocks were like in those draft rooms. I had a lot of fun doing them. Just the concept of knowing I could bang out a draft in 20-25 minutes was very attractive because I don't always have time for 45, 50-minute draft, but knowing I could sneak in a few of those. So Very much hoping we see more of those in the future. And I think it would be really fun if it were even more standardized, where a lot of these fast offerings did have a shorter clock. I think for me, I found the sweet spot to be about 15 seconds. I kind of like that one the most. There's sometimes just like a little bit of a lag on the 10-second where it actually seems like it's like a 6 or 7 second clock, which can be a little rough. But love seeing Underdog continue to innovate and, finding ways to make best ball not take as much time. I feel like that's the normal criticism from people. There's two things. It's one, I don't want to tie up my money for that long. And two, it takes a long time to draft 150 teams in a contest or whatever, when you essentially can cut it in half or maybe even a third if everyone's really cooking. That is a pretty big value add there. What is up, Damon? Beautiful morning for some fantasy football talk. I need to get a coffee pour going here, and then we'll get down to business. All right, let's see here. Actually, let me hit this question real quick. I think Fries is talking about my challenge videos. He says, going in with a rigid plan seems like the opposite of good drafting. I think I agree with you. I've addressed this when I do the challenge videos. To me, and you'll often hear people say, use these lower dollar tournaments to experiment. And I think I agree with that. My pushback to not trying new things is it's really, really easy to get in a drafting rut where you do the same thing over and over again. You're building just slight variations of the same team. And maybe for you, that is how you want to build out your portfolio, more power to you. To me, I want to be able to take advantage of different rooms. And that does require remaining flexible. But on the other hand, if you don't know what it feels like to build out a really good hyper-fragile team because you've never done it before, you might be thrown for a loop. So I like the idea of, I always equate it to like putting on a weighted vest when working out. It's like, yes, it's a little harder. If you were trying to run the fastest time or do the most pull-ups, you wouldn't do it with a weighted vest. But when you're training, you put that on and then it actually seems easier when the real thing comes. And so that's how I like occasionally experimenting in these contests, actually going in with a rigid plan. And then that way, when you are in a draft being flexible, you already kind of have that reflexive memory on how to handle that spot. So I do agree with you. I want to approach every draft and be open to different outcomes. But if you're not used to pushing outside your comfort zone, it can be hard to then naturally do that. So that's my only counter to that. Use the cheaper ones to experiment. And then in your higher dollar stuff and your BBMs or whatever, I think you'll be ready for whatever the room throws at you. Let's see here. Nick saying, surprised at the amount of us that multi-tabled the 10-second. I did 10, I believe Sack did 13, and Chipsy did all 20, I think. This is what's so funny. It's like, I rag on Davis for doing the multi-tabling as is. And then Underdog drops its fastest tournament ever. And everyone's idea is, let me multi-table this? Like how is multi-tabling the fastest tournament to ever exist on underdog.com? Our response. But yes, we were all sickos. And I guess it did fill quickly. So if you were trying to get all your entries in, maybe you did need to multi-table them. Catching up on the chat, the poor man, anytime I get a 10 out of 10 for KZ, I know it's going to be a good day. All right. I hopped into a Best Ball Mania draft. Let's get this rolling here. This is my 62nd Best Ball Mania draft. Absolutely insane that we will be nearing the halfway point soon, at least for my entries. I believe it was last year on like July 4th or 5th, because I remember I did a show and it was my exact halfway point. I want to say I was at 75 drafts last year. So slightly behind pace of my streamed draft challenge last year, but I think that's about where I want to be. I want to make sure I have some extra bullets for August relative to some of these mid-period drafting cycles. But yeah, feel good about my pace. And today we drew the 112. We got JJFC in here. I did tip you guys off in the Discord, although it's snap filled when I registered. I do try to provide that as a little perk if you guys are YouTube members and in the Best Ball Breakfast channel in the Discord, which is included in your YouTube membership if you're part of the Best Ball Value Hounds. But a lot of people are getting very savvy and smart at how to get into these rooms, whether they're sitting in it, whether ending up in overflow drafts. So I will do my best to tip you guys off in there, but I cannot offer any promises or guarantees anymore. Last week was pretty insane with these drafting rooms for how wide receiver heavy they were. I see lots of badges in here today. CMC going at 102 is a good sign, though. You know, when I see CMC at 105, that's when I know it's going to be a true avalanche draft. So we will see what this room cooks up for us. Look at that. Nick Bird flexing his 33 months as a YouTube member, closing in on that 3. Incredible. Oh, yeah, Tyler, how could I forget my 69th coming? Nick trying to fill an overflow draft. Needs 8 more in there. Thank you, Benjamin. Yes, please smash the like button. If you guys are new here, we've been doing 4 Best Ball Mania drafts every Monday morning. And we are on the clock. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Puka, AJ Brown, all go. I am at the turn here. Let's have a little fun. I've talked about mixing up my round 2 bets a little bit. I am going to take Drake London here. And then my default is to generally do Marvin Harrison or Chris Olave. I think on a previous Best Ball Breakfast, I did Jalen Waddle. Let's go ahead and let's do a Nico Collins today. Let's do Nico Collins. And so I've talked about this dynamic before where there's essentially 2 different things at play this year, right? Where the second tier or the second round all the way to like the mid third is pretty flat. And it does feel like a really clear tier break after those top 12 guys. In this draft, I could have taken Jahmyr Gibbs, but I'm just a scared piss boy who's worried about getting buried in an avalanche. So I'm going to go 2 wide receivers there. And the thought being, if I always draft off of ADP, which in general is my preference in the early rounds, that I'm going to have a disproportionate amount of teams that have the same pairings. Drake London with Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson with Chris Olave, any kind of variation of, London with Harrison, Garrett Wilson with Olave, all of those kind of mixes and matches of guys who are at the 1-2 turn. And I just don't want my entire portfolio to constantly have those same pairings from the back end of round 1. The general reason why you wouldn't do that is because you're often sacrificing a lot of projected points. If you're reaching in the early rounds, the market is generally pretty good at ordering those players. But I do think this year is very unique with what a tier gap there is after round 1 and 2. So I'm pretty pro mixing up the combos and now getting some Drake London with Jalen Waddle, some Drake London with an Aiyuk or Debo, Drake London with a Nico. So I don't see a huge difference between Nico and Marvin, Aiyuk and Nico. So we will shuffle it up. We will live a little. We will enjoy some neat combos. Which 2 elite QBs will JGFC take today? I love that JGFC has built out such a strong personal brand in these stream drafts. The JGFC Tinder drafting profile loves elite onesies, loves rookies, and loves risers, baby. JGFC, the thing that stinks for your personal brand, though, JGFC, is the number one thing I identify you with is being in on Deneric Prince last year. Yeah, Blizzy says, Pete, when drafting at the turn, do you think the bigger disadvantage is reaches for stacks or harder to snag falling value? For me, it's definitely the latter. Well, I do think it's multiple things this year because at least if you're at the top end of round 1, 2, 3, picks 1, 2, or 3, yes, you are having to pick on the turn, but you're getting such a clear tier break of an elite player. Like I like Garrett Wilson, I like Drake London and Puka, but Jamar Chase, Hill, Lamb are in a completely different tier. But yeah, I don't like, if I can pick my dream landing or drafting slot, I think it's probably like 1-4, 1-5, or 1-6 because I get one of Tyreek, Justin Jefferson, or Amon-Ra, and then I'm in the middle of the board. And you think of it just from, if you're at the turn, you might get 1 ADP value, right? Because it's going to come back and then you're going to grab it. But you just took the best ADP value and then have to pick again. So it's very rare to get 2 really good ADP values when you are at the turn. Whereas when you're in the middle of the board, you can kind of navigate it. And it also makes you less prone to a positional run and basically getting shut out. And in these stream draft rooms that often are very wide receiver heavy, it's nice to be able to kind of get a feel for the room. Like, what is the room doing? Is this going to be a true avalanche? Is this more normal? And then that allows me to know, like, oh, hey, I can grab Kyren Williams here because I feel like I'm going to be able to get my wide receivers at the 5-6 turn. So yeah, it's tricky. I don't like picking at the turn for a couple different reasons. And I do think because of that, like the 111, 112 is the least desirable spot this year. But we've always had those same kind of feelings in previous years. And then the win rates from the back end of the draft board have been incredible. Last year, obviously, CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra was the stone nuts. We've had years where CMC has gotten hurt, and a lot of those early picks had very poor win rates. So it all comes back to us knowing nothing. We have to make the best possible picks for our position and then let the chips fall where they may. All right, am I going to get a Kyren share here at 312? I will take Kyren here if the room gives it to me. No, Kyren doesn't come to me there. Let's see. I will do T. Higgins here. And then I have been saying, my rule has kind of been, I will take Sam Laporta in the 4th. I sometimes don't love how it boxes me out. Maybe we'll double tap wide receiver here. Pittman is someone who's a little bit lower in my aggregated ranks, but I've been liking having the opportunity to get him paired with Anthony Richardson if Richardson comes back to me at pick 60. So we will start all yellow: Drake London, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. It also gives us a chance to maybe get an extreme value on Burrow. I would probably not take Burrow at 85. Maybe I would, but maybe try to push him depending on what the Jamar Chase drafter does. But I really like Anthony Richardson. I really like some of those cheaper Colts pieces. Trying to pick my spots with Michael Pittman. He didn't fall to a place where he was a value in my aggregated ranks here, but does fall past ADP. And we'll get a little sprinkling of Michael Pittman here today. We are pissing this morning. I was gonna smash Kyren at 312. That's the I love the price there on Kyren. I would have loved to have been able to go like Kyren T there. Clutch Cow grabs Kyren at 35. Cannot blame him for doing that. Yeah, Paul says, just on a draft, Burrow went in the 10th round. Yeah, this was the theme of the video I did with Liam over on the Deposit Kingdom channel. And I asked him kind of what his favorite stacks were this year. And he said, taking Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb and then pushing Dak or Burrow. And I think it even works a little bit better with CeeDee, because other than if a drafter is trying to like double tap Jake Ferguson and Dak Prescott, there's really no other Dallas Cowboy drafter who is looking to get a stack. It would basically be anyone setting up a backdoor stack. And we know with these statue quarterbacks, people are not enthused to backdoor stack these guys. No one is sitting there being like, oh my God, I can't wait to do Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert with my backdoor Dak stack. And same thing with Burrow. Other than maybe Davis Maddock, no one is out there going like, yes, Jermaine Burton and Mike Gesicki with Joe Burrow is how I win $1.5 million. So we have to use that dynamic to our favor and really push those pocket quarterbacks. And it's counterintuitive, right? Because when you get these guys, you want to lock up the stack. We know how powerful those correlation benefits, how directly tied those production is between the QB and their elite wide receiver one. And yet, if no one else in the room is interested in those guys, it means you can get some extreme values on them while sneaking in an additional pick. So like, as an example, say at pick 85 here, I could essentially add who's a running back that has an ADP of around 85, be like a Jaylen Warren. It's like I could sneak in Jaylen Warren on this roster and maybe still get Joe Burrow at an extreme value. Or if I take Burrow, I'm getting another guy at 105 who I don't like as much, Trey Benson. So you start to do that 2v2. Like Joe Burrow and Trey Benson, yeah, that's fine. But if I'm able to pull off Jaylen Warren and Joe Burrow with the stack, then you start to see how you can build, more closer to a super team that other drafters aren't going to have as much access to. So that was one of my tips too from my video I did after 50 Best Ball Mania drafts. That's another video up on the Deposit Kingdom channel. Gave kind of 10 takeaways, things that I've learned through those drafts, and pushing those statue quarterbacks was one of the big takeaways for me. What is up, Ori? GA saying people forget Burrow is coming off a pretty bad wrist injury. Yeah, I've seen that talked about. I haven't seen any nuggets from training camp that would indicate we should be drafting him differently or that he's behind schedule. But I definitely want to keep tabs on that. Yeah, fade the fear. I haven't heard any tangible, reporting on that actually being a concern. Let's see here of what else is going on in this room. The 10-hole drafter here has not taken a wide receiver. Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Allen, Sam Laporta. That is going to be tough to pull off here. Lamar Jackson falls to the 5th round. This drafter did the Mark Andrews Lamar. I think it's so fascinating where I do think it's in sharp rooms. It makes sense to do Andrews first and then Lamar, and yet their ADPs are flipped, right? Like if you were just playing it by ADP, you take Lamar first, 45.5, and then you go Andrews at 48.9. But I think sharp drafters, bad drafters are more willing to prioritize the elite tight end. So that's just an interesting dynamic there to think through if you're trying to pull off that Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson. I've tried it in both directions, and I do think it's kind of room contextual as far as what is more optimal for pulling that off. See a little bit of a run here on elite tight ends. Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid come off the board. We already lost Laporta, Andrews, and McBride, Kelsey. So 6 here. That means just Kelsey available. But yeah, we'll see what we do here at 5-12. Our team so far, Drake London, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. I do like getting Pitts on London teams. That's another dynamic where just betting that if Drake London smashes and pays off this ADP, it means Kirk Cousins is doing Kirk Cousins things, which means the entire offense is rolling. I like, putting Keenan. Oh man, clutch cow. Whew. Clutch cow. Ouch. He goes Anthony Richardson there. I will survive. We do have CJ Stroud here, which is slightly ahead of ADP. Let's see here. The question is, do I want to play Stroud here, or do I want to? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab George Kittle, and I'm going to think this through. I think this is either Worthy or Stroud for me. I generally don't like taking Stroud at ADP, and yet because of this, I think I do. I think with these 4 receivers, I don't really feel like taking one of these running backs now. It's basically either Worthy or Stroud for me. I'm going to go ahead and just grab Stroud here. One thing I had talked about when I did my exposure review is I was surprised how little Stroud I had. He was one of my scariest fades. And partly that was because a lot of the times when I was scooping up Tank Dell in the 4th round, which no longer exists anymore, CJ Stroud's ADP was on the other side of the board, and he wasn't falling all the way back around here. Now his ADP has dropped. So I do just want to use the Nico pick as an excuse to get some CJ Stroud, Nico Collins. And again, generally wanting to be through those 4 wide receivers at least early. I did already get those. And so now I can kind of prioritize the onesies. So we'll get CJ Stroud and George Kittle here. And then that'll give us some decent flexibility when we come back to the 7-8 turn. Pitt's recent rise is pretty wild. I mean, it makes sense from a market perspective. Leone's been pounding the drum for him. Dwayne McFarlane over at Fantasy Life has been pounding the drum for him. Lord Reeves has been pounding the drum for him. It makes sense that there would be some market level impacts there, at least people drafting off of rankings. And there are these runs, right? Like in the same way we get this wide receiver run, in rounds 1 through 3. Then we get that tight end run in rounds 4 and 5. And while I would not take Pitts over Kincaid, I understand why this drafter says, hey, look, if I don't take Pitts here and I want to get one of these top 7 tight ends, there's no guarantee that one of them will be available to me at pick 67. Kittle generally is, right? Yeah, his ADP is right there at 67.2. But if we see the tight ends coming off the board, you basically have to say, if I want one of these guys, I have to spend that 5th round pick on him. Benjamin says, I started with Tyreek Hill, Debo, Waddle, Cooper, Pickens, Worthy earlier today. Don't stop at 6 wide receivers with that start. I would definitely stop at 6 wide receivers with that start. And I've talked about this before. This was actually another one of my kind of takeaways from my video through 50 drafts. And it was, while I love loading up on wide receivers early, these kind of drafts limit your flexibility, right? Because you're now removing an entire position from the player pool. Like, it is probably suboptimal for you to draft another wide receiver. And yet it's going to make it a little tricky for you to build out stacks because you don't have any other wide receivers you can tack on. So then you kind of have to do it through the tight ends. So if I'm looking at this team, obviously you already have the Hill Waddle, which is nice. So you got to lock up Tua. If you do something with Debo, I'm starting to think about Purdy with Pearsall. With Amari, I'm starting to say, okay, David Njoku is probably a premium target for this team because he allows me to complete a double stack there. Pickens with Freiermuth. So yeah, it's just thinking I like building out double stacks, triple stacks with my quarterbacks. And when I spend 6 picks right out the gate and I don't have time to kind of maneuver for the rest of those stacks throughout the draft, I feel a little limited. I do it a decent amount of the time if I think those wide receivers are good values. But yeah, I would stop there and just make sure that you're thinking through still accomplishing your correlation initiatives through the other positions, running back and tight end. Trying to see here. And the one nice thing too about doing the Stroud thing is now I will for sure push Joe Burrow. Like, I'm not going to take Joe Burrow ahead of ADP at 84 or 85. And the Jamar Chase drafter took Patrick Mahomes. Now it's unlikely the Jamar Chase drafter passes on Burrow at both 94 and 99. And yet, if they feel like they have already spent a decent amount of capital at quarterback with Patrick Mahomes, then maybe they do let them go by. But that's the nice thing about the Stroud pick is now I can wait for my second value. And with Brock Purdy, with Kirk Cousins, and with Joe Burrow, I kind of have multiple options here. And so I'll probably be selecting a running back here with this pick, if not 2. Jamison Williams goes, so we have gotten wiped out at wide receiver, but I'm feeling cozy with my 4 here. Najee Harris goes, I'm on the clock. Let's see here. By ADP, man, I click so much Aaron Jones lately. I'm going to keep clicking Jonathan Brooks. He's actually a guy I'd looked into for the video I'm making this week as a guy who's being discounted because of a perceived slow start coming off of that injury. But I think that is almost fully baked in at this price. And now I'm deciding, do I want another running back or do I want to grab Brock Bowers and shut it down at tight end? If I'm thinking through some of my tight end options, I still have Schultz as an option. I think it's probably smart to grab a running back here. The chat always gets mad at me for not selecting Jaylen Warren in my solo drafts. So I'll give one back to you guys, and I will take Jaylen Warren here today. So here's the team through 8 rounds. CJ Stroud at quarterback, Jonathan Brooks and Jaylen Warren at running back, wide receivers Drake London, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, and Michael Pittman Jr., and then George Kittle at tight end. So kind of keeping us in a spot where we have max flexibility here. Not really behind at any position to start. Got the elite onesies, got some upside running backs in those 4 early wide receivers. Generally the place I like to be. Warren over Jones is jumping the shark. I don't think it is. I have way more Aaron Jones than I do Jalen Warren. So this is just me doing a little RNG in this tier. But yeah, I don't think it's jumping the shark. I view a lot of these guys in a very similar tier. But yeah, you don't have to sell me on Aaron Jones. I have clicked him a shit ton to the point I'm actually looking to grab other guys. I've been taking a little more Zamir White lately, been taking some more of Jalen Warren and Najee, just because I'm personally bored of selecting Aaron Jones at this point. But I do like Aaron Jones. I think he's a very good pick. I just think I think you're probably lying to yourself if you're saying one of these guys in this tier of running backs separates in such a massive way that you would want to have 100% exposure to them relative to a guy who's ranked a few spots behind. Thank you, Tyler. Hit the like, support the channel, you freeloading chat rats. Wow. So much disdain for the chat rats. No, I love you guys. I appreciate you. We got 470 people watching live. We got 3 more drafts on tap today. Zeke, I've taken some Zeke. I've been doing, I'm wrapping up a couple of my slow Dalmatian drafts. And I believe in one of them, I did the Dallas double tap, the Zeke and the Dowdle. And I think I did that on the Swolecast the other day too. Yeah. So I wrote up a piece for Fantasy Life the other day, ranking my favorite backfields to stack. You guys can always go get a ton of free best ball content over at fantasylife.com. My guy, Jonathan Fuller, a lot of you guys know him from the Deposit Kingdom. He's been writing up some awesome articles for us as well. Although it doesn't look like my backfield stack got tagged as best ball. Maybe it's in the generic. Here it is. But yeah, I ranked all of these. Dallas Cowboys, I put as the number 1 with Zeke at an ADP of 127, Rico at an ADP of 141. My personal favorite is the Titans. I think the Pollard Spears one speaks to me. And if you guys want to read the rest of those over on Fantasy Life, I just dropped that link in the chat for you guys. Also have the Fantasy Life newsletter out today. I write that a couple times a week. We'll be writing it even more in season. Free newsletter in your inbox, 5 days a week. Lots of good stuff over there. Dwayne, Ian doing great work. Dwayne had a really cool article out this past week on wide receiver age cliffs and how to think through kind of like what the historical data says on these guys as they enter the latter part of their career, and kind of his takeaways on how he's wanting to play each of those older receivers. And he kind of went through one by one. Are they fades? Does he want to be underweight, even, over the field on these guys? I found that to be a very illuminating read from Dwayne. He's been doing some awesome data work over there. I don't know if this is as a euphemism or if you guys were actually drafting, but I will. Ben says he saw his buddy do the Dallas double tap at his bachelor party. I'm going to assume that's something filthy and that he wasn't drafting underdog teams at his bachelor party. I need a little more coffee, though. Let's do it. Let's see. Verzing says, nothing like listening to Best Ball Breakfast, delivering the mail, and drafting my own teams on a Monday. I love that. Sounds like a good way to pass the time. Little drafting, little BBV, little mail. All right, let's see here. What do we want to do by ADP? I like Brian Robinson on this build. Gets a little week 17 correlation with Drake London. I think he also pairs nicely with maybe a guy like Jonathan Brooks who might get off to a slower start. So let's go ahead and grab Brian Robinson. And then we got a couple other correlation options here. Spears against my Cincy and Indy in week 14 and 15. Javonte, though, also has the Cincy week 17 plus the Indy. Let's go ahead and do Javonte here. And now we have 4 running backs. Didn't really see anything at wide receiver we wanted to do there. AD Mitchell could have been interesting as kind of just like double stacking the Colts without Richardson since we already had Pittman. But we're now up to 4 running backs at a 1-4-4-1 build. CJ Stroud, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, Drake London, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., and George Kittle. Is Pat doing a July something marathon stream again? I'm not sure. Yeah. Last year, was it last year? Yeah, I think it was, man, time's a blur. Was it last year? Yeah, Pat did one of the years after he won. Pat did a marathon stream to commemorate the day he won his winning Best Ball Mania team. Yeah, we can ask him on stream later. How you doing, Copper Prices? I feel like I haven't seen you around the chat and the Discord as much lately. I've been seeing your Underdog Cardio Club posts. Are you doing good, Copper? See, this is, let's talk about this. Kyle says, too much emphasis on correlation. Benson is a smash there. No, see, I couldn't disagree more. One, I think this goes back to the tier thing. You won't be able to find anyone who says Trey Benson is firmly in a higher tier than Brian Robinson and Javonte Williams. Like, the market has pretty firmly spoken that this is a tier of running backs that all go in the same range. You then use the correlation to break your tiebreakers within that tier. I take plenty of Benson when I'm building out, say I have Kyler, say I have Puka or Cooper Kupp or Kerrane, and I'm building out something there. But that is the exact way to use correlation. Like, the exact way to use it. You have these 4 running backs. I'm sitting here looking at Singletary, Brian Robinson, and all of them had some correlation. Benson didn't have any correlation with these teams. That's how you not only get natural diversity in your portfolio, and you apply a humility-based approach to knowing, I don't think one of these guys is a significantly better bet. But if they do hit, I want them to hit in a way that plays into winning this tournament, where they're vaulting me to the top of a pod in week 16, in week 17. So could not disagree more. That is the absolute place to use correlation tiebreakers. And when people say like, hey, don't reach wildly ahead for correlation, I completely agree with that. But when you have 3 players, 4 players, all with the same ADP, all the same tier, that's when you dust off your correlation gloves. Yeah, and it's fun to have player takes, but I do think you're taking crazy pills if you think Trey Benson is like 3 rounds better than these other guys going here. I like Trey Benson. It's so funny, like the guys I'm arguing against, Aaron Jones and Trey Benson, are guys I draft a lot. But like, Trey Benson could be a 0 this year. Like that is a reality. Like, and there's a lot of these running backs, when you move further in the draft and we get to like the McLaughlin, the Vidal, the Bucky Irving, like I like those guys all to an extent. Those guys could be 0s. As far as the guys going in this range, DeAndre Swift's not going to be a 0. Raheem Mostert's not going to be a 0. Tony Pollard's not going to be a 0. Brian Robinson's not going to be a 0. Javonte, okay, maybe there's paths where he could be a 0. Tajay Spears, not going to be a 0. Devin Singletary, not going to be a 0. Gus Edwards, not going to be a 0. Trey Benson could be a 0. James Conner could do what he's done his entire career and be a bell cow back who cedes very little touches. And Trey Benson is a pure contingent play. It's a contingent play I'm pretty excited about. I like this offense. I think Trey Benson is talented. I think he could put up some really big numbers if he had the backfield to himself. But you could also just grab Marshawn Lloyd 30 picks later. You know, you can grab other contingent bets. Zach Charbonnet, a super clean contingent bet. But I will push back on Trey Benson being significantly better than the running backs in that range. If I could have your guys' crystal ball on who is and isn't going to miss games, I would be a very rich man. You guys should all win Best Ball Mania. If you can accurately predict who is going to get hurt and who isn't, you literally can build the best teams on Underdog Fantasy. If you think James Conner is for sure going to get hurt, you should take Trey Benson in probably the 5th round. I think that would be fair value. If you knew James Conner wasn't going to play half the season, you could take Trey Benson in the fifth round. You should have 80% Trey Benson at these prices if you are convinced James Conner is going to miss time. Why wouldn't you take the RB1 in Arizona on the majority of your teams? I don't know, Pete. Now that you say it, I'm getting kind of nervous. What if James Conner doesn't get hurt? Then I'd have 80% of a backup rookie running back. Yeah, no shit. That's the whole point of this, guys. All right, let's see. Are we going to be able to have any wide receivers come back to us here? Brock sliding is interesting. I think I would happily take Brock at pick 132. Where is the Aiyuk drafter has Hurts? I assume he's going to take Brock here as his second quarterback. Yeah, he takes Brock. So thinking through other quarterback options, we still have Kirk, but his ADP isn't until 147, so we could definitely push that to the 156 pick, see if he comes back. If we do get shut out there, there's still some backdoor stuff we can do. Bryce Young with Brooks, we can do Bo Nix stuff. Yeah, so I think we have options at quarterback. I'm not too worried there. By ADP, we do have my guy Zeke kicking around here. I think I would like to get Schultz because this allows me to shut it down at tight end. And also I get that correlation with Stroud. I like being able to double stack Stroud. I do have a bunch of week 14 buys. I think that's something to keep in mind. And I do like the Draft Caddy here shows me my bye week overlap. So you see that B5 next to Dalton Schultz. I was going to like to grab Josh Downs. I think this is Xavier Legette for me. Legette, I already have Jonathan Brooks. It gives me another quarterback out. And I don't think I can leave this 11th round with only 4 wide receivers. That doesn't feel good to me. So we're going to grab Xavier Legette, and we are going to be taking lots of stabs at wide receivers over the next few rounds as well. We'll see how that works out. But here's the team so far. CJ Stroud at quarterback, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson, and Javonte Williams. Wide receivers, Drake London, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., and Xavier Legette. And then our tight ends, George Kittle and Dalton Schultz. So I'm going to shut it down at tight end, most likely. Feeling completely fine at quarterback and running back. Maybe a smidge nervous with my wide receivers here, which is what happens when you only have 5 through here. But I think we'll be fine. I think we'll have a couple wide receivers we don't mind in this next pocket of the draft, although we shall see. Johnny says Legette is a beast. I like him at this cost a lot. Yeah, I did not love Legette's prospect profile, but this is one where I have no problem clicking him in this range. I think like the whole thing that scares me about a lot of those rookie wide receivers going in round 6 is that I think the range of outcomes is really wide. And I certainly see the upside case. I think you can say the same thing for Legette. Maybe his floor is lower than some of those guys, but I don't think his ceiling is that different. And to be able to kind of arbitrage that, 60 picks cheaper or whatever. And I think he's the perfect guy when you are looking for that 5th, 6th wide receiver from an early wide receiver heavy start. Where you're still needing to build stuff out. And then I love that he also gives you another quarterback option. I had Daniel Raz from Legendary Upside on Best Ball After Dark this weekend. He wrote up an article recently for Legendary Upside about navigating the wide receiver avalanche. And basically, if you do need to build out stacks late in your draft, how can you afford to take CJ Stroud, George Kittle, some running backs here, Dalton Schultz? How do you pull that off? And it's with these undervalued passing offenses. And he highlighted 3. You guys should read the article to get the full set of goods. But the Carolina Panthers were one of those offenses. And because I already have Brooks, because I already have Legette, I now have all kinds of different things I can do with a cheap correlated bet on an undervalued offense. I could, dare I say, add Adam Thielen. I don't think I will do that, but I could also add, of course, Bryce Young, Jatavian Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. Like, there's lots of ways to continue betting on this offense, surprising people. And I think I had been I've been tilted very heavily to the Broncos and Patriots as kind of my de facto break glass in case of emergency stacks. But Daniel made a really compelling case for the Panthers being right there with those guys as far as teams who could essentially be this year's Texans. The offense, everyone thinks is going to suck, but what if they don't? What does that look like from a player smashing ADP standpoint? And I do think Leggett is almost like the linchpin to this whole thesis. Obviously, Bryce Young has to rebound, but it's like they need a breakout star on that offense in the same way CJ Stroud was aided by a couple breakout wide receiver stars. So I like the correlation between Leggett and Bryce Young. I think if those two, or if one of those hits, the other one is likely coming along for the ride. Blizzy, I love this question. Would you consider a pre-produced Deposit Kingdom mailbag episode be a fun video with extra time to ponder our questions? Yeah, I would love that. I see you're a YouTube member. I'll create a thread in the Best Ball Breakfast channel. I can also post it on Twitter or something, but yeah, I would be happy to do that. I've been thinking of that for my PO Box newsletter as well. If you guys had some questions, I could always use a little bit of inspiration. I normally just kind of go with what is interesting me personally, but then sometimes I get some really good and thoughtful questions that I haven't explored that would be good fodder for making a video. So yeah, I appreciate that suggestion. I love that idea. So Kirk Cousins went off way earlier than I thought to the Kyle Pitts drafter, but that is okay. This is why we always be building out backdoor stacks. Going to need to think through some of our wide receiver options. I think we could probably get to 5 running backs here and shut it down as well. I kind of like the idea of grabbing a Denver wide receiver, even if I'm going to have to reach a little bit ahead of ADP. I then would have outs to Bo Nix and Bryce Young. This is kind of an interesting spot because like Quentin Johnston is the ADP faller here, also has a little correlation with Denver, but thinking through how I build out this team from a correlation standpoint, I've already bet on Javonte Williams. I think this pushes up one of the Denver wide receivers into being the pick for me over Quentin Johnston. The question is, what do I do with this second pick? Do I just double tap Troy Franklin here? I guess I could still take QJ. I could also grab a running back and be done. I kind of want to leave one running back in the chamber here. I think I can keep one running back in the back pocket because I don't mind I don't know if I do Chuba with Jonathan Brooks. I don't hate that, but I feel like I want to grab another wide receiver here. And I think I'm just going to lean into this correlation. I think I'm just going to grab Troy Franklin here. And this was, again, something I talked about with Daniel Raz that I think is maybe a slight leak in my correlation game where because I like the Patriots and the Broncos, I'm often doing things where it's like, oh, I have Marvin Mims and Javon Baker here. But what is more likely to pan out is that one of these undervalued offenses hit, and I'd rather just make the big bet on that one team instead of mixing and matching like one flyer from 4 undervalued offenses. And I really do love getting the Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin pairing together. This ends up being a byproduct of picking on the turn that just doesn't feel good because you're not getting them at value. But considering where I started in this draft, in that a lot of these wide receivers were going to be absolutely wiped out by pick 180, I feel good about just leaning into that Denver bet I've made. So we now have Jonathan Brooks and Xavier Leggett together. We have Javonte Williams, Marvin Mims, and Troy Franklin together. We got our CJ Stroud double stack with Nico and Dalton Schultz. And then our other players, we got Jalen Warren, we got Brian Robinson, we got London, we got T, and we got Michael Pittman there as well. Where are we at with Vidal? Yeah, I struggle with him. I think I don't mind his price, I should say. For me, there is a pretty clear tier break here. So we see like Kendre, Ty Chandler, Marshawn Lloyd, Zeke, Rico. I push Chubb down into this next tier where guys like Jalen Wright, McLaughlin, Vidal, Algier, again, getting back to that conversation of like who could be zeros this year, like those guys could be zeros. So that is a little bit concerning to me. And, Vidal is probably the riskiest of all of those guys just with his draft capital. And yet it's also not hard to see how he could be fantasy relevant. So I don't mind his price. He had gotten really expensive after those initial comments after the draft, but I think he's priced appropriately. And I want to be mixing him in specifically on Chargers bets, on New England, opposite week 17 stuff. But yeah, I have no problem with him in this range. The bye week bros are coming for me, stacking Bo Nix with Stroud. This will almost for sure be a 3 quarterback build. But yes, I hear you, bye week bros. I am now one of you. Don't worry. Al says Brooks is RB1. I'd lean into 6 RBs. I disagree with this thought generally. I don't really care about like, oh, Brooks is my RB1 or whatever. Like, I want to think about it holistically of what kind of production am I getting from this team? And with guys like Brian Robinson, Javonte, and Jalen, I do think I'm getting production right out of the gate. And this was a concept that we've been talking about recently on ship chasing. I know a lot of other sharp analysts have been talking about this idea. I kind of dubbed it on ship chasing Hyperfragile Zero RB, where the thought is guys like Brian Robinson and Javonte Williams, presumed lead backs. I think to a greater extent, maybe guys like Zamir White and Najee Harris. Those guys used to be going in rounds 4 or 5 higher than they are now. I really worded that in a weird way. They used to be going much higher. So you can essentially build out a similar team from a positional standpoint as you used to, but just 2 to 3 rounds cheaper on all of them. And so then it's how do you adjust? How do you take advantage of that? Well, it's stopping at 5 wide receivers in the same way you would stop at 4 or 5 if you took Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, Zamir White, and Najee Harris. You wouldn't feel like you needed to add on to that. I certainly hear you about Jonathan Brooks and not expecting production from him early, but I don't feel overexposed with a Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, and then we'll see if we can get another back here who we feel good about. All right, so we have 4 more picks. I do think 2 of them are going to be quarterbacks. One of them is going to be a running back. And then I think we have what I would call a luxury final pick. Thank you, InSun, for taking Adam Thielen away from me. I do appreciate that. Joshua P., I thought you said you were fading Brooks until pup news. I did say I've been trying to pump the brakes on it. And then I started doing my research for this video that's coming out later this week on how to handle these guys. And I'm now back in on taking Jonathan Brooks whenever around ADP. I think he's just one of the more mispriced guys on the board right now. So yes, I have slightly changed my tune on that. And also I think there's a chance that there could be really good news for him in that he's playing earlier and that he does actually start to rise up. Bucky Irving is an easy click for me here. One of my favorite running backs on the board, and I get him just a few picks past ADP. Feel good about him as my running back 5. And then I do think I should probably lock up Bryce Young here. I think I would feel pretty gross if I got shut out of Bryce Young trying to push him to 204. And I don't really see something that I have to have outside of that. So let's get Bryce Young. And that way, even if I ended up in a spot where I only wanted to do 2 quarterbacks here, I think I could. I think Bo Nix, makes too much sense for this team, but with CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, I think I could stop at 2 quarterbacks there. Yeah, and this is the thing I've been thinking through. Artillery Frost says if Brooks falls, that just means you take him even harder. And that was kind of where I've settled after kind of working on that video, where it's like, I want to continue to take him at or around ADP. And then if he drops, then you're just going to keep loading up a ton. But yeah, the more I thought it through, I was thinking, there was a few different scenarios that I was kind of thinking through. Like, first of all, if Jonathan Brooks didn't have an injury, where would he be going? Say he went on the Panthers, but he didn't have an injury. I do think he'd probably be going in like that Aaron Jones range, maybe a little bit higher. And then I was thinking through what would have happened to Jonathan Brooks had he ended up on the Cowboys or the Chargers. I mean, then you're probably looking at a 4th or 5th round pick. So we're getting kind of this double discount on both the injury and the perceived bad landing spot. And it's just year after year, some of those like totally mispriced guys for reasons that don't reflect how the Best Ball Mania contest works, I think are some of the last big remaining edges. And it's like, I keep trying to hammer this home, and I mentioned this in the video that's going to come out. When you think about like weeks 1 through 14 is 25% of the contest. That's round 1. Week 15, another 25%, round 2. Round 3 is week 16. That's another 25%. Round 4 is the last 25% of the tournament. So 75% of the contest is weeks 15 through 17. So even if a player misses the first 7 weeks of the season, and yes, that would likely be a slight ding to your advance rates, that still represents 12.5% of the total contest, 12.5%. And that's where we're getting discounts. We're getting a discount because of lack of production for the first 12.5% of this contest. And on top of that, it's when the rest of our teams are the healthiest, right? Like at the end of the season, a lot of chaos is kicking in. Think about all the teams we have on bye in week 14. Think about all the injuries. It's maybe harder to survive having a 0 at week 14. It's a lot easier to survive that lack of production at the beginning of the season. The teams are healthy. The buys haven't fully hit yet. So to me, that's kind of what I've been exploring in that video. And Jonathan Brooks, to me, is kind of the poster boy of that dynamic. And one of the things we should be leaning into if we are really trying to optimize for week 17. I won't tip this one off to the audio listeners, but yes, this individual that AJ is talking about features heavily in the new video as well. Kyle says, I like this team, Pete. No need for Bo Nix, though. So this is the spot I like to be in where, like I said, I'm going to have a last luxury pick because you can say there's no need for another tight end. There's no need for an 8th wide receiver. There's no need for a 6th running back. So then I want to say, what is that makes the most sense for me? What is the pick that can unlock this team or give it more, supercharged potential for the fantasy playoffs? In general, I think that is going to be the 3rd stack. I have such a big bet on the Denver Broncos on this team with Javonte, Marvin Mims, and Troy Franklin that I'm probably leaning to that. However, if I get a really good ADP value or another big correlation angle, I'm not opposed to taking it. I do think if some of these running backs stay on the board, some of the running backs look interesting to me. This draft has been going by slower, and partly it is going by slower than a normal draft, but also coming off of doing the 10-second and 15-second drafts, everything seems a little bit slower today. But right after this draft concludes, we are going to have RotoViz's Shawn Siegele joining us for a draft. That'll be our 2nd draft today. And we just got these final 2 picks here, and we will do a quick rundown before welcoming Shawn on. We do have a decent amount we have some interesting picks here at running back. And I do think I'm leaning toward taking this 6th running back here Braelon Allen, I don't have any correlation, but I really like the price on Braelon Allen here at pick 204. He does go. Tyrone Tracy, I think, is another fun bet to add on. We do have the correlation with Indy here. And then the question, I think I'm going to do Tyrone Tracy. I think it is Tyrone in Bo Nix for me. I think that's how we are going to play this. None of these wide receivers are really moving the needle for me. I could triple stack, CJ Stroud with Noah Brown. But this is what I was talking about, of having this luxury pick. And maybe by draft capital, it would say grab an 8th wide receiver. But I think, to me, getting that extra stack in the fantasy playoffs, if I'm going to have the Broncos propelling me through one of these pods, it's going to be because Bo Nix is a big part of that. So here's the team. It's in the can. And then we are going to bring Shawn Siegele on. Our quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and Bo Nix. We got up to 6 running backs: Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, Bucky Irving, and Tyrone Tracy. Our wide receivers: Drake London, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., Xavier Legette, and then that Denver Broncos double tap of Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin. And then we got our 2 tight ends, George Kittle and Dalton Schultz. Like how this team turned out here, got stacks out of the wazoo, some nice week 17 correlation in here, a nice 0 RB build, and if anything, maybe just slightly weaker at wide receiver than normal with only 7 there. But I think these early 4 and then getting a hit out of one of the Denver or Carolina offenses could help this team cook. All right, without further ado, it is time for the Best Ball Banana Stand. All right. Welcome to the Best Ball Banana Stand, a weekly show hosted by me, Pete Overzet, with my co-host, Shawn Siegele. Every single Monday morning, we hop in a Best Ball Mania 5 draft. We fight off wide receiver avalanches. We build out highly correlated teams that have the chance to take down the $1.5 million prize. Shawn, welcome to Best Ball Breakfast.
I'm excited. I'm ready. I'll be interested to see how our draft goes after watching you finish that last one. It was a little bit, I don't know how fast you were able to get started, but our last couple of drafts have taken like 35 minutes. So if people want to give us a few more seconds on the clock today, they are welcome to do that.
Did you have a chance this weekend? Did you hop in any of the mini schnauzers with the faster clocks?
I didn't, but that sounds like a lot of fun. I'll sometimes, draft late at night while I'm reading or doing something else, and you're always kind of waiting for those picks to come back around, which is very different than when you're doing a show where you're like, wait for us. So.
Exactly. It's so funny. I have all of these different shows with like different requirements. Like when I do the randomizer drafts and we're doing these kind of crazy prompts and stuff, I like need the most amount of time to do the bits before. And then when you're drafting on your own, or, I'm like, let's speed this up. Like, this is all I'm doing with my attention. I love the early clock. So yeah, if you guys didn't get a chance to check that out, I believe the 10-second clock one filled the mini Schnauzer 3, but there's still the 4 in the 5 there that have 15-second and 20-second clocks. So if you're looking for some faster drafts, those will normally take, 25, 30 minutes instead of, say, a full 45 to an hour draft. But Shawn, I have hopped us in Best Ball Mania. We have the 1-5 today, which is kind of nice because I feel like we've been either really early or really late. This will give us a chance to try some new things here.
Yeah, and it's not perfectly ideal to be outside those top 4 guys. You obviously have a meaningful tier break there. It was, discussing some things in a slightly different format, but the article that I worked on last week was about how 2024 is a race to beat the tier breaks. And obviously that's about a lot more than just like navigating the first round where, your pick is set. But it's interesting as we go through where the tier breaks are and then how you need to kind of counterattack in order to balance those things out. But I'm with you. I like having this pick here at 5 and the different things we'll be able to do.
Yeah, I just said that, because in my first draft, I had the 112, and someone in the chat was asking me about my preferred draft slot. And I said like the 1, 4, 5, or 6, because you get one of those wide receivers you like, and then you can also scoop value. You can read the positional runs, all of that good stuff. We do see Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill come off the board. We'll see what the drafter at the 4 spot does here. And then we will be off to the races in this Best Ball Mania draft. And I was enjoying listening to you and Colum talk about the MFL 10 of death you're doing and how that doesn't really have established ADP. So you're having to do a ton of guesswork on what kind of player might come back. With Underdog, it's a little easier to navigate since we have so much data on how these drafts go. So Chase goes. So we're looking at Jefferson or Amon-Ra. Who should we go with here?
I don't have a strong preference. I tend to go back and forth with it. Both of these guys set up the types of teams that I really like because Minnesota and Detroit are two of my favorite teams to play through.
Yeah, let's do Justin Jefferson. He's one of my most drafted players in round 1. I do like him. It's mostly because of circumstance as far as how my draft slots have fallen. The fact that early on in draft season, some people were taking Amon-Ra ahead of him. But for some reason, it's still a little hard for me to click Amon-Ra over Jefferson. So I will keep kind of loading up on him there at 1.5. It does feel like we're just getting kind of a slight discount on what it should be.
And, you kind of look through that set of players that work with him, where you have Chicago in 15, Seattle in 16, Green Bay in 17. And then when you start to play those players, it's a lot of the same teams that are coming back for them as well. And you end up being able to fairly tightly build your team without having to make some other moves that might be a little bit less comfortable. So I love that Minnesota start. Is there any element where Detroit offers more additional players? Now, obviously with Minnesota, they do have some additional players that we like, but is the variety of guys you can draft with Detroit after Amon-Ra is gone, does that factor in, or you just very clearly like Justin Jefferson better?
I find them fairly comparable, as far as like the options. Obviously, some of the Detroit pieces are more expensive. Like you're never going to be able to get Amon-Ra with Gibbs, or at least in most drafts. You're maybe having to reach a little bit on Laporta now as he starts to slide to be able to lock that up. I'm still a little iffy on Jamison Williams. But then obviously the San Francisco stuff is really fun to build out. But I feel like it's very similar for Minnesota. Like Addison is in a sweet spot. McCarthy is free in drafts. Hawkinson now is really starting to slide. He's another guy I've been teasing a video I'm working on with a couple RotoViz contributors, David Felipe and Michael Dubner, and looking through some of these injured guys. But yeah, I'm pretty in on a lot of these Minnesota guys. Looking at ADP, it's Aiyuk, Adams, Barkley, Evans. What do you think the way to play this is here, Shawn?
Yeah, this is probably an Aiyuk share. If you wanted to reach for neighbors, I'd be fine with that. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and grab Aiyuk here. What are your thoughts? He does slide a few picks past ADP. He is one of the only, news items these days. It seems like he is in, a very public, breakup with the Niners, where he's, currently not happy with his setup. We've had a video of him with Jaden Daniels where he said that the team doesn't want him back. Are you working under the assumption that Brandon Aiyuk will be on the Niners this year? Or do you think there is the possibility that, the feelings and the money end up being too much and they break up? Well, this seems like one where it's just very unlikely that it doesn't work out for him for fantasy purposes, where he's so valuable that the team will either, figure out a way to get him there as they make that push to win a Super Bowl, or they do eventually work things out with another team. And there are a variety of teams who could really use, anybody could use Brandon Aiyuk, but there are some teams that think they're going to be competitive that need another receiver. Some of those situations also, again, if the team is competitive, in many cases, you actually have decent QB play. The things that would really knock him down, obviously, it would be if this extends into the season or somehow he gets moved to a team where the quarterback play is catastrophic, because almost any team that you move him to, his target volume is going to be better. And so then you're trying to figure out exactly what the offset is with the crazy efficiency, because we know that he has had that in the 49ers passing game.
This is a question. We don't get to talk about him a ton because we're not clicking him, but Raise It wants to know your bearish Davante thoughts. Anyone who's seen your rankings know that you have him buried. What is the counter against Adams for you here?
Yeah. So his yards per target last year were really, really low. And, that is obviously one of the couple components there of the yards per route that everybody tends to want to cite. You got to look at both of those things. If the per target efficiency is really low, as a player gets older, those are red flags. They didn't have other people to throw it to last year. They will this year. They're going to still have probably poor quarterback play, which means when you put all that together, there is some risk for you that the efficiency stays low and the targets drop. I guess I'm not as convinced that he's going to be a target hog. Now, will the targets be there? Yes, but he's still ranked in a spot where there are lots of other good players. So it's not like I've, moved him down into, round 7 or 8.
So Shawn, Malik Neighbors falls all the way back, considering we were going to potentially take him in the second round. I do add him to the squad. So we start Justin Jefferson and then get a pretty fun start because Brandon Aiyuk slides a little bit past ADP. Neighbors slides a little bit past ADP. You got to think that this trio is maybe a little bit more rare than in just a normal room here.
Yeah, I love it. That looks good. I understand why there's a big gap between Neighbors and Harrison. And my guess would be that Harrison is overvalued as opposed to Neighbors being undervalued. But when you look at the various scenarios that could play out for the players in this range, and you asked me to take Neighbors versus the guys who went between Aiyuk and Neighbors for 15, 16, 17. I've written some very positive things about Devontae Smith. I think that there is a very real possibility that Cooper Kupp comes roaring back this year. And, you have that same kind of argument about, why are you okay with him when Puka is there? I just think you're going to get a much more dynamic passing offense with the Rams, and that 1-2 punch going to be potentially a little bit different than, if the Raiders have both Jacoby Myers, who is still going in a range where people think he's going to be solid, and then I don't think it's going to be just Brock Bowers. I think that Mayer will also be a viable part of that offense. He should probably be going, I don't know, actually a little bit earlier, but he's somebody that I like to keep an eye out when I don't draft Bowers in the late rounds if you need a third player, because I think we're understating his ability. He probably didn't get to show what he could do last year, and now probably maybe we'll never get to show, but as an ancillary piece who could, help the offense, but maybe suck a little bit of air out of individual target shares. I think you want to be aware of that. And certainly anybody who's saying, well, that's why your Bowers ranking is wrong. I can understand, that part of it too. But when I'm looking at Neighbors against those other guys for late in the season, I guess I like Neighbors.
Well, and I think that's a good point too about how you think about ranking sets, right? You're not thinking about every one of these players in an individual vacuum, right? Like you are thinking, if my thesis on Brock Bowers is correct, how does that play out for the rest of the offense? Like those things have to logically move in tandem. For Brock Bowers to be a smash, you got to pull from somewhere, and it's probably from Davante Adams, returning value at that second round price tag. So I appreciate when those rankings tell, a coherent story throughout. Shawn, we are about to pick here. It looks like we got by ADP, you got Allen, Kelsey, ETN, Lamar. By ranks, ETN, Kincaid, and then some receivers. What do you think we do here?
Yeah, I think it depends on how much you think we need to stick at receiver. I'm pretty good with reaching for Keenan Allen, but ETN and Kincaid are both very exciting ways to play like a one play off of our receivers here.
Yeah, let's grab Kincaid here. I have been noticing ETN falls a good bit. I know 3 of the drafters behind us have already grabbed an anchor RB, so maybe a little bit better chance that one of those come back around than the tight end here. And because you have a pretty higher rank on Kincaid over Kelsey, it's very unlikely Kelsey comes back. Unlikely Kincaid does as well. So I think we lock up that elite tight end there.
And Kincaid is somebody that I'm very highly prioritizing, and yet do find in individual drafts that I've tended to go in a different direction, or he's been very expensive in the specific drafts I've been in. So it's great to get a share here.
Yeah, and right after Allen comes back, normally if you do want to get like the Dalton Kincaid, you can sometimes take Allen here at 45. But seeing as Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews immediately coming off the board, I'm not sure if that would have happened for us there. So yeah, I think makes sense for us to get our guy Pacheco and Hollywood Brown go to the turn, and then we will see what comes back to us here in the 5th. The team so far, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Aiyuk, Malik Neighbors, and Dalton Kincaid. Have you gotten any Allen with Kincaid, or is kind of Allen just not a guy you're getting with how your rankings are set up?
The more that I have been looking at this and our roster construction explorer, I mean, you always want to keep in mind that the previous season is not going to be exactly the same as the upcoming season, but there are so many reasons to believe that specific elements from last year will push across. So ETN does go one spot ahead of us there. Keenan Allen seems very straightforward for us at this pick.
Yeah, let's grab Keenan Allen. He also a little week 15 correlation there. Jaden Reed does have the week 17, but let's go ahead and grab Keenan, who you have. Well, both Keenan and Jaden Reed, you have aggressive ranks on there, but we get our wide receiver. I did think ETN was going to fall because the drafter had already taken Henry and Allen. I thought they might go a third wide receiver there. Looked like they might have timed out, which could have worked against us, but nevertheless, Keenan Allen. But sorry, continue your thought there.
So one of the things that we're seeing is with this sort of, very aggressive wide receiver approach that a couple of QBs in the window returned extraordinary advance rates and then into the playoffs last season. That's something that anybody who's kind of followed us for a long time, if you just checked in a couple of years ago and you're reading Michael Doomer's fantastic Best Ball Bible, you know that the two QBs in the window has been, it's not every year, and you do have a year or two in there every once in a while where elite QB is the play. And Josh Allen is, very intriguingly priced. I think he's going to score a lot of points again. You need very specific things to come up. I've drafted Josh Allen a little bit, but especially when you look at some of the other things you could do and, how outside of Kincaid, I'm not that optimistic about his guys. And so if you then start pushing some of those other players into the Josh Allen builds, I think you're kind of doubly weakening them, which isn't to say that they couldn't work, because anytime you get into the playoffs with a Josh Allen, you're like, well, now I have this trump card. Basically what happened last year, I think there's a strong chance, especially because we have, such a history of that, throughout the last decade of the two QBs in the window, that I'm looking for very targeted opportunities to take the expensive QBs, because I do think there are places that they work, and especially when you're getting some of the CJ Stroud prices that you get if you've got a Houston player early. I do like that. Now, obviously we don't today, but there are going to be opportunities to take those guys, and the prices are not, completely debilitating, but it's not the first thing that I'm looking to do in drafts.
Yeah, for people, we're going to be picking in the 6th round here a second, but I did want to kind of continue the thought about the two QBs in the window. I know longtime RotoViz subscribers will know what you mean by that, and I think we've talked about it on a previous show, but I also know you've been willing to break that for a specific ADP environment. Like last year, set up so well for late round QB. The majority of our drafts were late round QB. Do you think kind of the macro environment actually meshes up with the historical data this year, where like those two window QBs are kind of the at least optimal way to play drafts this year?
I do. And that's one of the reasons why I might have like the tiniest edge to Amon-Ra where we picked today, where you can pick him and then you can pick Jared Goff, who is very nicely priced, and you have both of those things accomplished without having to, obviously you're using your first round pick on one of the guys, but that sets up so nicely to not have to worry about some of the QB elements later. And at the same time, I also think it sets up nicely. So I'm pausing here because we are back
on the
up and have some interesting choices.
Yeah, we could do Kenneth Walker for our first running back. We could go bully tight end with George Kittle, or we could grab the last of kind of a wide receiver we like here in JSN.
My preference would be Kittle or JSN.
Okay, let's you know what? I don't think, Shawn, we've done a bully tight end team yet. I definitely with Bowers. I don't think we've done it with a non-Bowers. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's have some fun here with Dalton Kincaid and George Kittle.
If it turns out that Bowers is not an elite tight end, then we don't have any double elite tight end teams.
Exactly. And this is another thing where I feel like because we hadn't done the ETN, we got that 4 wide receivers. This is something you've talked about. When you have these 4 wide receivers at the top, and I feel really good about these: Justin Jefferson, Aiyuk, Neighbors, Keenan. I don't think we have to. There are some builds where we only have 3, right? Where JSN's probably a priority there. But I think with these 4, we could have a little fun here, and we're using kind of our luxury detour bullet on a second tight end.
And I think that's a really fun way to build it out. And I don't necessarily push for JSN there because, it's about a round ahead of ADP and not quite that much, but in theory, in a normal room, he would come back to the next pick. One of the reasons why I love this, though, and kind of set from the beginning, and one of the reasons why I mentioned Allen there in 5 as opposed to Reed, is that as you come back through, when you take those guys, if you take JSN, then you have the Minnesota week 16 set up and the Keenan Allen week 17 set up. And then you also have some of those quarterback things you can come back and do with Caleb Williams and Geno Smith. So again, not for this. I love that we took George Kittle, but in terms of thinking through that Minnesota kind of Chicago early start, those are some of the things that I like, especially when you're in a position where, JSN's more likely to come back to you in that next pick.
So by ADP, Watson is up here. You could pair him potentially as an opposite thing, but by rank, we're looking at Aaron Jones, Jameson Williams, Brooks, Ramondre, Stroud. What do you think is the play here?
I'm willing to go with your preference. I mean, Aaron Jones or Williams are interesting.
Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and grab Aaron Jones for us. I've scooped up a little Jameson Williams when he slips past ADP. He's been a little harder for me to reach for. I am just kind of laughing because it does seem like that Amon-Ra versus just Jefferson decision point has been a big one, because like all of the things that have lined up from a correlation standpoint have been through that Detroit game. Cause it's like, oh, we had Kittle, we built out a double stack with Jameson Williams. It sent us down a slightly different path here. But yeah, someone was asking about Aaron Jones earlier. How are you viewing him? Because he kind of sits in the middle of, like, there's the Mixon, Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, and James Cook. And then there's like the Montgomery, Najee. Aaron Jones to me is kind of like slightly in between those 2 tiers of running backs in this range. How are you kind of viewing him here?
Yeah, and so much for him is going to depend on, how healthy he stays, and then that overall setup there with the Vikings offense. It's starting to sound like we're going to get Sam Darnold and Jacoby Brissett for a huge chunk of the season. Now, you get into camp and the rookie QBs play well, some of that stuff can go out the window pretty quickly. But I guess in some ways I do feel a little more comfortable with this idea that Darnold is going to get enough of the season to where only McCarthy will play once he's ready to play. And so the offense might be competent on both sides of that. So then you look in, what offenses actually could be pretty explosive, even with a quarterback wart. You have the coaching staff there, you have the receivers, you have the dome. And then with Aaron Jones, you have a guy who I think is a little bit overlooked at this point. He had one of the highest broken tackle rates in the entire NFL last year. He's got explosive speed. His price actually doesn't make a lot of sense to me, in that, I would expect him to have a greater share of their workload than James Cook has, in Buffalo. You're getting him after a very weak starter in Rashad White. I think Aaron Jones should be more expensive, but he has had some injury issues and their offense could be bad. I don't think that it will be. And so he's not somebody that I actually have a ton of, but I do think his price is wrong.
So I don't think we can go triple bully tight end with Brock. The one draft he falls to us at a nice range, but DeAndre Swift, who you have top of the ranks, also pairs with our Keenan Allen, with our Minnesota stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go that direction. continues to show off how easy it is to build out not just, a competent running back room, but a running back room that has potentially explosive upside. For Swift, I think you actually have more red flags than you have for Jones, in that he didn't actually play particularly well last year. I think he's got more competition in terms of his backups than Aaron Jones has. You have a lot more questions about the offense. And yet DeAndre Swift, one of the best guys in space, one of the best players in the NFL in terms of being able to get through the initial hole. If Caleb Williams is able to do the things that we expect and maybe overcome the coaching staff a little bit there, it's going to be hard to take out those receivers or account for them and also put up the type of defensive front that you would expect Swift to struggle with. And we could see him back to where he's leading the NFL in yards before contact and just generating a lot of explosive plays.
Yes. Swift has been an interesting one. I feel like Swift, maybe Javonte Williams, some of the more kind of like polarizing backs. And, in previous years, I think like a lot of these guys, same with even a guy like Najee, where it's like they would have been a 5th round pick. They're not. And so now it's like, it's really hard to even have pushback on some of these guys at these prices, because a lot of the risk there is removed at these kind of more depressed prices. One thing I want to talk through with you, Shawn, and this is actually a similar spot we've been in previous drafts, where I'm thinking about the quarterback stuff. We have Caleb Williams as a potential with Keenan and DeAndre Swift. I was just looking, we pick at 116. I don't think we can push him because the Rome drafter does not have a quarterback yet. The DJ Moore drafter is behind us, but that's just one thing I wanted to flag. Not that we have to prioritize Caleb Williams, but something to consider for us there. We also have a big Jordan Love slide. He is someone we could build out backdoor if we like some of those options. What do you think the play is for us here?
What are your thoughts on the group of guys pushing players down? Jaden Daniels also there. We also have a little bit of protection in that ideally Brock Purdy, Daniel Jones would be guys who work. If there's a different player that we like, I think we should attack him. I don't know that there is, though. And, I would be willing to go with Jordan Love and try and find one of these Green Bay Packers receivers that normally we don't draft, because I'm always like, you just have to draft Jaden Reed.
Yeah, let's do it. I think my only pause generally, I know it's so funny how this draft would have broke, like all those little decisions, this would have been like came together in the most clean way possible. I did select Jordan Love there. I like that it gives us the chance to maybe sidestep the JJ McCarthy pick, or kind of being funneled there, which if we go Jordan Love, this sets us up to potentially do 2 quarterbacks, free up a roster spot. I also like you said, that it gives us some options to select some Packers we haven't selected yet. I was going to say my one pause is I do kind of like tacking on a tight end when I do the Love stuff, whether it's Musgrave or Kraft. Obviously, we're probably not going to do that, at least with Musgrave. There'd just probably be too much of an opportunity cost at his price. So that was the only thing that gave me pause. But of all the quarterbacks to backdoor stack, I mean, Jordan Love is one of the better ones to do it with.
Yeah. And there's an argument to be made that if I'm right about Jaden Reed, that the rest of those guys are close enough together that the most expensive ones are probably incorrectly priced, but the cheaper ones, maybe are still giving you that scenario where they come up and come through. But I'm exaggerating in some ways. There really aren't that many names that they're offering. It's just that the starters are all very interesting.
Yep. So let me recap this team for us so far. We got a 1-2-4-2 build. We grabbed Jordan Love at pick 101. We got our 2 running backs, Aaron Jones and DeAndre Swift. Our wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Aiyuk, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen. And then our 2 tight ends, Dalton Kincaid and George Kittle. Yeah, I think it was just the same dynamic that we've talked about before of like, when you do get this one quarterback here, I just like having that option to grab the second one as a faller, whether it's Caleb, whether it's Purdy. and then being able to shut it down and knowing that we can have that extra roster spot, as opposed to like, if you miss out on Love and then Caleb goes and then we're catching up elsewhere and then Purdy goes. Now it's like, how are we going to build out a quarterback room with so few options? So I do like getting that one guy in the 9th or 10th in this case.
And I think that you can also do that. And then, if Daniel Jones is the best player available in round 18 and you don't have pressure at the other positions, you can still add that third QB for the playoff portion of the contest, even if maybe there are some trade-offs in terms of playoff advance, but you're still free to pursue what makes the most sense for a variety of elements in the 17th, 18th rounds.
Yep. Caleb Williams does go, as I expected, to the Rome drafter there at 112. We did have a bunch of running backs come off the board at this 9-10 turn. Spears, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, Singletary, Chase Brown, Benson. There have only been a couple wide receiver picks. There was only 2 in the 8th round, Cortland Sutton and Tyler Lockett. Only 2 in the 9th round, Joshua Palmer and Rashid Shaheed. And then 2 so far in the 10th. I was actually hoping this slide would happen. You don't have him high in the ranks, but I do want to ask you about Romeo Dobbs in the context of this team.
He's tough. I mean, I do kind of like Wicks better, but I'm very happy to take the discount on Dobbs here.
Yeah, I was basically, if Dobbs was gone, I was gonna be like, we need to lock up Wicks. But I feel like in this scenario where we took Love and then we get the ADP faller by almost 12 picks, I kind of like the story that this team is telling. Yeah, and you think, Shawn, like you were saying, if you're going to have a ton of one-off Jaden Reed, like a pretty fun way to play that from like a portfolio perspective is like, okay, this is the team where maybe Reed doesn't separate and it's Jordan Love feeding these other guys. I do kind of like how that balances out.
Yeah. And I don't think that I even have Dobbs as like a win falls kind of guy, but that's one of the fun things about putting together that list of priority targets in the overall attack is that the guys like Dobbs, the guys like Wicks, as you work through, where you're going to have them is when you have the QB and you have the ADP discount. And so in that situation, you exercise a little bit of humility and say, this is a situation where if I'm wrong, I can really take advantage of it because there are multiple types of leverage that I wouldn't just throw into a normal portfolio. One of the issues that I've had with Wicks is I do think it's a little overstated how much he played last year. And when you kind of work through, you see him playing when other guys are out. I think that in this season, Dobbs is under threat from these young players who looked more dynamic and looked like they were able to get open better. But the story that last year told for the Packers is that Dobbs was the person who was actually the foundation of that. And then everybody is kind of playing off of him. Certainly, he feels like a guy who could have a fluke high touchdown season as well if Jordan Love hits. And so from that perspective, I mean, if the young guys, if some of that was a little bit fluky, I mean, Dobbs could still be, really the piece that everything revolves around in that offense. And if that's the case, then it's a huge win at this point.
So we could shut it down at quarterback with Brock here. Kind of interesting. Or continue to leverage our portfolio and take Jacoby Myers on a non-Brock team. But what do you think the play is here?
I think we should go with Purdy.
Yeah, I like this here. He's a full 10 picks past ADP. We now have our 2 quarterbacks in the window. Someone, I know we got a little sidetracked. Someone was asking, how do you define the quarterback window?
So it's basically, and you can sort of look through on our tools in the different formats to see where these guys are going, because in each year it can be slightly different, but we're basically talking about these players sort of from the QB 9 to approximately the QB 17-ish type of range. You're looking at, approximately maybe mid round 8 through say round 12. You have a decent number of players that you're working with. It's certainly not everybody, but you have a full tier there of 10 to 12 guys, depending on the season, where ADP is telling you these are the players who are most likely to kind of fill this certain type of thesis. You're looking to stay away from the expensive guys because the opportunity cost is so great. And you're looking to avoid players who simply are probably not going to score enough total points. And then once you get into the playoffs, probably don't have that same single game upside, which isn't to say that you don't occasionally get it, because you obviously do. That's one of the reasons why when you work the analysis specifically for the playoffs, sometimes you come up with slightly different results, especially if you have the 3 QBs. But that's basically what we're looking at for the QB window. And it can help me to, try and execute some discipline for that, because my natural pull is to see the kind of breakout scenario for some of the later guys. It's helpful to have that reminder that, they're priced there for a reason.
We got the 2 quarterbacks, the 2 running backs, 5 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. There's a couple interesting correlated picks that are both available to us. Marshawn Lloyd gives us that second or third piece with the Packers. Do you think that's our play here?
Yeah. You said you had another one that.
Yeah, I was going to say Ricky Pearsall, but you're a little bit lower on him. He's right at ADP as well. I was just thinking with the Brock double, but I think Lloyd feels good here based on your ranks.
Yeah, I think I would prefer to go that route, and not that the extremely 49ers heavy build couldn't work, but I'm certainly hoping that we do get some concentration of the points with kind of our main 2 guys. It's unfortunate in some ways that Kittle ended up being the pick, because as you mentioned, we did have some other very palatable tight end options later. But then when we're able to get Purdy at this excellent price to put those 3 guys together, it's been nice that we made some choices that maybe if we had done the other thing, it would have worked better. And yet the choices we actually made have worked out very nicely in this draft, which they certainly don't always.
Yeah, Pearsall does go, but I do think I because the tight ends for Green Bay were likely not on the menu for us, Lloyd is really the last piece that makes sense for our team for building out a bet on the Packers. So I do think we made the right decision locking him up. And we also needed to build out some more running backs in this range. We know how there's a nice pocket of running backs here, and the trap is to be like, oh, I can just push it. I'll like the running back, but you only get 1 pick in these rounds, and we're still at only 3 running backs in a 0 RB build. So I think Lloyd checked a lot of boxes for us there. And now with this, structure, we really can just go running back, wide receiver the rest of the way. Obviously, I think if there's a slam dunk value, we could, experiment with a third at the onesies. But feeling good here. I'll recap the team real quick before this pick. Jordan Love and Brock Purdy, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, and Marshawn Lloyd at running back, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Aiyuk, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen, and Romeo Dobbs at wide receiver. And then our 2 elite tight ends in Dalton Kincaid and George Kittle. By ADP, I'm just going to look at the running backs and wide receivers. You got Quentin Johnson, Jalen Wright, McLaughlin, Vidal. And then by your ranks, it looks like this is definitely a running back pick for us. Do you have anyone you like here?
Well, I've started to move a lot more in the direction of Jaleel McLaughlin as a guy that you need to make sure you've got your shares of. I really like Vidal. I really like Wright. Any of those 3 guys I think are perfect picks.
Let's see here. Let's just, I'm not sure who's going to come back around. I want to hear you talk about Vidal. Someone was asking about him earlier. He's been a tough guy for me to wrap my head around. How are you thinking about him from kind of like a risk reward? And I think he's almost most interesting to discuss through the lens of J.K. Dobbins, because I feel like we kind of know who Gus Edwards is, where it's like, I don't know if we know for sure who J.K. Dobbins is at this point.
Well, I was interested in this pick to kind of ask you if you had gotten more comfortable with him at all. One of the things that did happen to me in the MFL 10 of death was that in the spot where I would have taken Vidal, JJ grabbed him, and that allowed Ray Davis to slide down to me. And I went ahead and picked him at what is a pretty big discount to what you might say is sort of like universal ADP. I was disappointed that that happened, because I think we're now into an environment where I get a lot of feedback from people, talking about, how crazy the Ezekiel Elliott prices are, because there was a presidential debate where, Elliott being like the football version of that seems.
Where are you going with this?
Well, I mean,
wanna
Gus
hear
Edwards is basically like a weaker version of Elliott, who also should be drafted where he's being drafted, right? And, I'm not clear on the health there. Kimani Vidal is someone who was excellent last year in college and has a better athletic profile, I think, in terms of the size, athleticism that people are getting credit for. I mean, the Chargers are going to be one of the most run-heavy teams in football, probably. I mean, we may be overconfident in that, but I think they're also going to be dynamic. They've got an excellent head coach, I think an underrated coordinator. They have Justin Herbert. They're going to run successfully, and the two guys that this late-round rookie is competing with are both broken, right? So I don't know that he actually has to do that much to end up with a big workload. I'm going to say that, and my favorite player, J.K. Dobbins, is going to go out and rush for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 1. And then in week 2, Gus Edwards is going to score like 4 goal line touchdowns. And people are like, I don't know what you were talking about. Those guys are absolutely fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're about to pick in the 14th round. We have seen a bunch of the running backs we were discussing go off the board: McLaughlin, Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving, Antonio Gibson. See some more quarterbacks come off the board. We'll see what this drafter does here. I would be pretty excited if Ray Davis slips through the cracks and we're able to get both of these guys here, specifically because we also have, am I going to jinx it? I jinxed it. I knew I was about to do that. Based on rank, it looks like Algier would be a good fit here. He slid a little bit past ADP. We also could take a stab on a wide receiver. How do you think we navigate this pick?
Well, if we were going to do Daniel Jones late, Wan'Dale will be interesting. I think that Algier is pretty exciting here, though, as a pure contingency play. I think one of the things that I realized the other day when I was doing, and it was a lot of fun for anybody who wants to check it out. Ben Gretchen and I, last week for Stealing Bananas, we did this big global look at Dynasty ADP in the RotoViz Triflex format over at the FFPC, which is basically kind of the default format that even if you're not playing there, people when they're doing startups are playing that. So the ADP is very good for understanding, what is happening in Dynasty. And so the point of the show was to go through the different positions, look at guys' prices, see where things are exploitable, but also to see what sort of interesting takeaways the Dynasty ADPs might have for redraft and best ball, where Dynasty managers telling us that the upside might be greater or in some cases lesser than what is priced in these other drafts. But maybe the thing that popped out the most to me as we kind of work through that is that Tyler Algier is somebody I have stayed away from because unlike so many other plays in 2024, when you get so many just very cheap and dynamic options where the standalone value is pretty obvious, and then you look at the Falcons, and both because Bijan is so good and because of the way that the coordinator in terms of the coaching tree, those types of things, how you might actually expect Bijan to have this massive workload. And I'm looking at Algier. I'm like, yeah, there's a talent gap there. Maybe the standalone value for him is lesser. And it had really kind of gotten my rank to where it no longer made sense and to where I certainly wasn't getting any shares. Even in 2024, I think you want to keep in mind the players where if the starter went down, the backup would then be a top 10 running back. That's the case for Tyler Algier. He's a 1,000-yard rookie. He's more athletic than people think, in part because every single part of Atlanta's offense was so broken last year. He was kind of covered up. Certainly, I hope Bijan Robinson stays healthy. Not everybody does. Yeah,
it seems like such a clean bet. We talk about ambiguity for RB2, RB3. There's no ambiguity about Tyler Algier being the direct backup there. Some wide receivers come back around for us here. Wan'Dale Robinson's the ADP faller. Franklin right at ADP. What do you like?
Yeah, I'm willing to go either way there. Wan'Dale, even with Neighbors and even with the possibility that we don't have the QB, just seems like such an easy pick.
Yeah, and I like I was talking about this on the first draft, how I think maybe sometimes a little bit of a leak in my correlation game is like, I'm taking the one-offs on all of these undervalued offenses and wanting to get back to, it's so much easier if we just say the Giants are a smash this year because Neighbors is awesome and Wandell and the entire offense, and making that single bet as being like, we need Troy Franklin to hit here. We're not going to have Bo Nix or other pieces. We need, Javon Baker to hit here. It's just a lot easier to nail an undervalued offense than it is to nail one-off players within these environments that are expected to fail. Like that's what the market is telling us with some of these, really cheap quarterback and late wide receivers. So I like just continuing to build out our bet on the Giants once we selected Neighbors.
And I do think that Neighbors, if he blows up, helps Wandale. I think that those guys are going to consolidate. That's one of the reasons why when we talked about Jalen Hyatt versus Darius Slayton on the show a couple weeks ago, I'm like, yeah, Slayton may end up playing. I think that he's somebody who has demonstrated kind of where he is as an NFL player and a ceiling player. And certainly if Jalen Hyatt ends up being the guy, it does a lot more for that offense, and that's where the upside would be. But I do really think mostly what we're going to get is Neighbors and Robinson. And it's always fun there when the little blurb is feels faster than ever, as opposed to hurt and not playing well. So.
Yes, we will take that for sure. Here's the team so far, Shawn. Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, up to 5 running backs there. Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Marshawn Lloyd, Kimani Vidal, and Tyler Algier. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Aiyuk, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen, Romeo Dobbs, Wandell Robinson, and then our 2 tight ends, Dalton Kincaid and George Kittle. Now kind of with the retrospect of like how this draft has broke, how do you feel about getting these 2 tight ends here? Because that's always kind of like the biggest decision point, I feel like, as far as structurally how your team looks.
Yeah, and I think that this, in the same way that, if you think the best player available is a tight end, even with the, 2 elite tight ends in the last round, I think you can take that and give yourself an additional path. Ooh, we have a 5 QB run here.
Yeah.
In round 16.
This was a good room to already have had quarterbacks locked up with Nix and Drake May all coming off the board in the 16th. People not wanting to get shut out there. Looking at our picks, Malachi Corley's the big ADP faller as far as the rookies. He does correlate in week 17 opposite our pick against Dalton Kincaid. Or we have some running backs, the aforementioned J.K. Dobbins. How do you think we play this?
My thought would probably be to, it's such an odd, fun team. I would probably still just go ahead and take Walker, but certainly Corley at the discount if you want to get a share there.
All right. I don't like to overrule Shawn too much. We also still have a little bit of correlation there. That's a week 15 with Walker going against our Giants. Talk about, I know you're high on Walker, I guess. What is your, at least at these prices, what would still be your reservation with Corley?
I think that you have an offense. Well, the first thing is just that he was, if you believe that the data gives you a sense of what these guys are, he was pretty significantly overdrafted. You could make the same play and make it in a maybe a more interesting offense by taking, Malik Washington in the final round. That's a similar but better player. The draft capital, obviously, very, very different. I do think that Garrett Wilson is going to be such a massive target hog. And then with Mike Williams and Tyler Conklin, you also have players who are being drafted such that, I'm a little bit below the market on those guys, but certainly we're getting, plenty of information that those guys are going to do. And then Breece Hall should also catch a ton of passes. And he's the more dynamic player underneath than I would say Corley is. And then especially if you're going to have a really low ADOT guy in a half PPR format, it's not that if I thought he was fantastic and was going to get a lot of volume that I'd be staying away from him. But I think you start to add up the different concerns, and even when he falls, he's not a big target for me.
We're on the clock here. This has to be a little bit of a rankings push up. I see Dameon Pierce up here at the top. I should also flag if we did want Tyrone Tracy, he's past ADP. He will likely not come back. Jalen McMillan also available, 10 picks past ADP. Some interesting options here. Shawn, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it depends on what position you want to go with, but McMillan beyond ADP is maybe more interesting to me than Corley was.
Yeah, let's do McMillan. He's been someone who's been rising up. So like my kind of, ears perk up when I see that he has fallen past ADP. No specific correlation angles opposite Kimani in week 15 there, but I like getting him at this price. And this is kind of another funny one where it's just like normally in a draft, McMillan would go where we took Walker, and then we'd take Walker where we took McMillan, but we still get them both via the roundabout way.
And I do like to occasionally do it that way. Although, I'm sure this will make you happy, but sometimes in these rounds here, I exercise more ADP discipline by myself than
really. That's funny.
I'm trying not to get too much Walker because I do think that he is massively undervalued. But then if you're wrong, you just have this big hole. This is such a fun team that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure we put him on there, because I think he has a chance to really smash.
Yeah, I like how this wide receiver room has come together. We had those early 4 guys that we feel really good about: Jefferson, Aiyuk, Neighbors, Keenan. We take Dobbs as an ADP faller who's correlated. We take Wan'Dale Robinson as an ADP faller who's correlated. And then we go out and get 2 of probably the better rookie wide receiver stabs late in the draft in Devontae Walker and Jalen McMillan. I've heard lots of positive buzz about McMillan at camp. Has there been any specific reports about Walker, or is this still kind of just trusting the eval and the situation he's walking into?
Yeah, they've talked him up and said that he looked more polished than they expected. And they expected him to be able to get open at will. And you can put him in that kind of Brian Thomas range as someone who is just uncoverable athletically. And once you do that and you put him into this offense with the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson having some limitations, but also because of what he forces defenses to do, I guess we talk all the time about all that the late round guys have to do is catch a couple of long touchdowns. I think that's less of a just long shot dream with someone like Walker, as opposed to something that's built into why they drafted him and what he does well and what the offense potentially does well. And so you put those things together and they're saying, yeah, I mean, he is that guy. It is encouraging.
Tracy almost comes back to us. He goes, but Pierce has been still sitting at the top of the ranks, does correlate with Walker in week 17. Any other picks you'd like to do here?
No, I think that's probably the way to play it. I do think that Guerendo is interesting. And, on this San Francisco oriented team, there's some reason to consider that. But Pierce is a guy where I think that, I've talked about this a little bit before on the show, where I think you want to keep an eye out for players who were sort of overhyped. Pierce came in with not a great prospect profile. I don't know that he is special athletically, but people were very excited about him going into that rookie season. He actually played very well and looked like a slam dunk for the people who had pushed that positive thesis. Then he comes out in year 2 and looks more like, I would say, his college career would have indicated. I think that in some ways we want to be sure we're not overstating either thing. We want to consider how much potential value is in that Houston Texans running game. And then we want to consider where the starter is, which I would argue, you've got a very sort of rich man's version of what we talked about with Ezekiel Elliott and Gus Edwards, where you're very much propped up by volume and situation. It's not that those situations where you're propped up by those things fail. They do they work from time to time. That's the reason why people are interested in them, but they also offer us some of the best opportunities at a 0 RB type of pick, or just a nice late round running back type of pick for the backup, if the backup is interesting at all. And I think this is one, again, where you can exercise some humility as you're going through your picks, where you might not even really be in on Dameon Pierce, but in the last round, it's very hard to argue with a guy who has shown some things in the past. And one of the things people talk about with Pierce is just this question of if he fits the offensive scheme. I would hope that if the team believes in him and has been talking him up as they're doing in the offseason, that they have at least some mild solves for the things that they did wrong with him last year. Now, maybe that is hoping for too much. We know that in many cases, NFL teams don't have those solutions. And yet, when you are able to make a humility-based pick with a lot of upside and almost no consequence, I mean, it's not that there's no consequence. You only have 18 guys that you need them to perform. But in round 18, I'm really trying to force myself to make some of those plays where, I mean, Pierce is more dynamic at this point, right, than Joe Mixon. We don't know if he's necessarily better for what the offense is going to do. And certainly he's not going to start as the starter. But there are some interesting things there that at the prices you got him in 2022 and 2023, I didn't think you had a lot of room to outperform. Now in 2022, you could argue that you still did. This is where I think you want to have a player like Dameon Pierce when it's the last round.
Yeah, and I assume, is it maybe a little similar to kind of like your Davante Adams, Brock Bowers ranking dynamic, where it's like, if you're not ending up with a ton of Joe Mixon and end up with a pretty big fade, it's like, okay, if this really does go south and Joe Mixon doesn't burn me, sure, he could just have a middling season and then Pierce doesn't do much either. But is this a way of you thinking like, this is how I can kind of get extra leverage on that fade if Pierce is also ends up being the guy you need?
Completely. And I think that we want to, in individual teams, as you talk about all the time and have done a great job through the years of really conveying to the audience, you need to tell that team within the story. Within your rankings, you're telling the story as you mentioned earlier, but you're also being aware of all of the different scenarios that could play out and trying to price them to an extent. What are the probabilities of these different things happening? And so I don't think that you want to necessarily be all in on someone just because you have a different player faded, but those things do work in tandem. And so if you do feel strongly about something, you need to play the other side of it. And that's one of the things that through the years, even going back 10, 15 years ago, that we were able to do very successfully with Zero RB is to see where we had weak running backs, to see where you had, even long before Ben, really help people and popularize the running back dead zone, those types of things. You had that dead zone profile for running backs. And if you have that profile and then you have an interesting backup, those are the guys that you have to hit. They don't all come through for you, but you're very strongly on the right side of the scenarios and the right side of the probabilities when you do that.
Let's recap this team now that it is completely in the books. Ended up with a 2-6-8-2. We got our two quarterbacks here, Jordan Love and Brock Purdy. Ended up at 6 running backs. Some fun symmetry with these picks. You got Aaron Jones and DeAndre Swift, kind of the lead backs in that Zero RB window. Then 2 rookies with a pretty wide range of outcomes in Marshawn Lloyd and Kimani Vidal. And then 2 kind of pure contingent upside running backs within some pretty exciting offenses in Tyler Algier and Dameon Pierce. We have our wide receivers here. Those first 4, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Aiyuk, Malik Neighbors, and Keenan Allen. We grab Dobbs with Love, Wan'Dale Robinson, another giant there. And then 2 exciting rookies at the end, Devontae Walker and Jalen McMillan. And then we had those 2 bully tight ends as well, Dalton Kincaid and George Kittle. For going the bully tight end, Shawn, I still really like the looks of the rest of our room. I would say maybe these running backs aren't quite the typical flavor that we're normally getting, but I do like how this team came together.
Yeah, and running back looks really strong. One of the things that is hard for me from time to time, and one of the reasons why I've been mentioning the research on the 2 QB in the window and how I'm pushing myself to do that, because those picks, those window QB picks, do conflict with some of the names that you're really wanting to build out your running back room. And so when you click on the QB there and you don't get the running back that you prefer, that can be hard right now. And it may be a little bit artificial because we don't actually know how some of these backfield depth charts are going to break. But when you can get Vidal and Algier there, and then when you can get Pierce in the last round, to be able to get 6 running backs and have, I don't think any of these guys are throwaway. Now, Pierce may end up being throwaway at the end, but it continues to underline the fact that the opportunity cost to make some of those picks in the QB window are not as large as it seems if you come back through and take the right type of guys. it's not that we know exactly who's going to hit, but there are archetypes that are far more likely. You load up with those players, and I think you get pretty excited. And then, Pete, one of the things that happened here, and it's not that the ADP values late in drafts are some big deal, but as opposed to having to really reach for some of our targets, we got a lot of guys around below where they normally go.
They did. And I was just looking at that and saying that I think really helped allowing this team get to the spot that it did. I think there's some certain spots where if we don't get those ADP values, it starts to feel like we were maybe more backed into a corner. One little decision point I was going to ask you, I'm just looking at a couple 2v2s, because I think we would have taken Keenan instead of Dalton Kincaid, but I guess for the sake of this 2v2, like if you go Jaden Reed there instead of Kincaid, and then we still do Keenan, and then we get George Kittle where we do, maybe then we're probably taking Bowers at 93. I'm just wondering, like, knowing how that stuff broke, do you feel good about kind of the slight ADP reach on Kincaid and kind of funneling us to maybe a different construction there, depending on how we would normally play it?
Well, I like the fact that we got Kincaid. I like the way that the team turned out. Can you look at the board again?
Yeah.
I was wondering if Ingram even actually came to us at a nice price as well.
He went at 87. So that was, we took Aaron Jones, and then Ingram, Ferguson come off the board. Bowers comes back, but we already had our 2 tight ends, so we go DeAndre Swift there.
Yeah, so Ingram would have been basically right at ADP, which is another sort of interesting choice if you don't want to get the running back that early because you're confident of what's going to happen after that. I probably would do it the other way and would end up with Bowers and just make that reach for JSN, because the Seattle piece really locks together all of those NFC North plays. It's because I like JSN and like Lockett a little bit later, and like both of the running backs, I like playing through the NFC North because Seattle just ties all of that together, and you have a variety of ways that you can get to the Seattle piece. We didn't get to it here. I think if we had done that too, then we would have ended up with a Caleb Williams instead of a Jordan Love. But I love the way that this draft actually worked out, being able to making that the choices where we don't reach for JSN, we get Dalton Kincaid, we don't have yet another team with Bowers. I love the fact that it sent us down a different path and we got to make different decisions in this draft. For me, that was more valuable. And I think the team is more interesting simply because, we did some different things here.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on the Seattle stuff. I was seeing if Tyler Lockett would come back to us at pick 101. He went a couple picks after we took Swift. Then I was keeping an eye on Zach Charbonnet. He went, but then Lloyd came to us, which I think Lloyd with Love was even more important than that Seattle piece. But yeah, it was funny that this draft was, I'm using a disaster from a correlation standpoint based on what we could have done with the Amon-Ra pick. Like every single thing would have lined up perfectly. But I think structurally in the ADP values we got pushed us to a build we wouldn't make. And I have a feeling we'll build some Amon-Ra teams like that down the stretch. So Shawn, let the people know what you guys got going up on RotoViz. I can barely keep up. I got multiple articles bookmarked that I have to get to here lately. What do you guys have up on the site?
Well, as you mentioned, we got so many fantastic things. We had like 5 more articles come in from what I think are great writers. Obviously, I'm biased. Sort of over the weekend, we'll have a ton of stuff out. But I really want to mention Michael Dubner's new piece where he works through some of the wide receiver avalanche elements. And I think the lens that he took with this, where he looks at it from a variety of angles, really explains it so people can understand the data behind it, the theory behind it, why drafters are doing it, what you should potentially think about doing. He uses the RotoViz Roster Construction Explorer. He uses our Underdog Advanced Rate Explorer. He uses his own work and references some of Pat's work when he talks about where spike weeks come from and why that is relevant to the wide receiver avalanche. And then he also talks about Jake Bose, who I mentioned on the show the previous week, the simulation work that he has done talking about receivers in some of these new ADP landscapes that we're facing and how receiver definitely still looks like the correct play. You can get all of those things together by checking out Michael's most recent article. And just also wanted to mention quickly, anybody who is looking for some discounts for the pieces there, some opportunities in different contests that we have, and just to get some of this stuff free if you want, we have a free premium email that you can subscribe to at the bottom of every single page. Pete, with July 4th coming up here in a couple days, I'm sure we'll have some great coupon codes for the listeners to deploy as well.
Awesome. Well, Shawn, always have a blast drafting with you on the Best Ball Banana Stand. If you guys are listening to the audio feed of this, you can check out the live streams every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern and vice versa. If you guys weren't able to catch the entire draft and you need to grab us on the go, make sure you guys are subscribed to the RotoViz and Best Ball Banana Stand podcast feeds. Shawn, I'm going to let you go, and we are going to bring Pat Kerrane on for the next draft. We'll see you next time, Shawn. Scuba Kerrane, Patty Millions, Peacock Pat Kerrane on the 1s and 2s.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
98 yards to the fucking house against Carolina in week 10.
All right, Pat Kerrane, Best Ball Breakfast, draft number 3. How we feeling on this Monday morning?
Feeling good, man. 2 nights in a row. Vivian has slept through the night. We're there.
That's incredible.
Man.
What's her sleep window? We were talking about the QB window in the draft before. What's the sleep window?
So the current sleep window is she went down, let's see, she went down like at 9 or 10. No, she was down more at like 10. And then we're doing like a dream feed where she doesn't even wake up.
Yeah.
At like midnight-ish. But Britt's already gone to sleep. And then she wakes up at like 7:30. Vivian wakes up at like 7:30. So she's doing like, I mean, at least 7.5 hours from like the last time she fed, but she's going even longer from like when she's like down for the night. So it's glory. Like 5 days ago, she was sleeping like 4 hours in a row at most. And then all of a sudden she's just like, yeah, I'm down. Let's sleep all night.
It's such a good feeling. It's as many parents I'm sure will tell you, it's like a roller coaster where there's the ebbs and flows. Like you get in a really good rhythm and then something shakes it up. We had my big win recently was April had started to get up really early. She was getting up at like 5:45, all this stuff. We go to Colorado and the time zone's working in the other direction. So she got up super early the first night. But now when we came back, she's just been sleeping until 6:45, 7 every morning. And I'm like, Lauren, if we get into this rut again where she's waking up early, we just have to go do a trip to the West Coast and like reset her clock.
You're welcome to visit if you need to reset a clock.
Exactly. No, I would love to get back out there. One of our other friends who live in LA, they just had a baby too. So maybe we need to just do an all out SoCal baby trip.
Love it.
All right. I hopped us in a draft. Best Ball Mania, Pat. We got the 1-7. I got the fresh batch of legendary upside ranks uploaded here. Did you get to do any of the hyper fast Schnauzer drafts over the weekend?
I did some 10-second ones. I did like probably 4, 5 of the 10-second ones. I like them a lot. I think the 10 seconds are so fast that I just never click draft. I would just put players in my queue and let it.
Me too.
Yeah. So I haven't done any of the 15 or 20 or no, what is it? Yeah, it's 15 and 20, right? I haven't done any of those yet. I want more of the 10. The 10 was nice.
Yeah. The 10, I've just been laughing because so many people, their reaction to a shorter clock was, let me try to multi-table a bunch of these.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
My reaction was the opposite. I was like, let me remove every distraction from my life and give it my full undivided attention.
Yeah, because it's a shorter window. I made the mistake of Jeez, man.
Hey, I like how Sacrilegious makes it his life mission to squeak out every piece of EV on the Underdog platform, but then you went multi-table 13.
I don't think he's squeezing EV there. He squeezes something else.
Yeah, you guys are sick. You guys are sick. Yeah, it's a good use case for the sidekick and help make sure you're not missing anything obvious.
It is nice. The sidekick's very nice for the 10-second clock.
All right, like I said, we got the 1-7. We got some friends and family in here. I'm happy to report these drafts haven't been quite as avalanche-y, but we are in that classic spot. Bijan, Brees with the wide receivers.
Let's go one of the receivers.
Yeah. Who do you want to do?
I think Brown or Garrett Wilson would be the most fun way to play it.
Let's do Brown. I've mentioned how I've been clicking Garrett Wilson ahead of AJ Brown in a ton of drafts and how I was starting to get a little spooked by that. So let's do an AJ Brown draft. You're also getting Hurts falling a decent amount as well. So that's always a fun option.
Exactly. I honestly think Puka is probably the strongest pick of those three. but Brown is really interesting in these rooms because of the fall, that Hurts is having. And then Wilson, I'm working on a piece where I'm looking at like the guys I'm most worried about their ADP changing. And it's not like my biggest targets, like, oh, I want to take this guy forever here, but like guys where I'm like, I don't have that much of this guy, but I like him. And what if he rises? And Garrett Wilson's one of those dudes where I'm like, I've had a hard time. How do you take more Garrett Wilson without being underweight on Puka or Brown? Because it's just like, so that first 11 is so locked in.
Yep. Yeah, when I was doing my puppy twos, I was getting Hurts with Devonta Smith at the 4-5 turn. Like Hurts was really starting to fall. So yeah, I've been wanting to mix more of that in. It is this interesting thing. I think I said it maybe earlier in like big board drafting season where it's like, we're not getting that big of a discount on the Eagles for how poorly they finished last year. You would have thought maybe the market would have overreacted a little more. It's mainly just Hurts, right? Like if Hurts would have crushed down the stretch, he'd probably be the first quarterback off the board in like the 3rd round.
Maybe, but like Josh Allen's falling, and I know, he lost Diggs and they weren't like as exciting in terms of their approach to the game, but I mean, all the quarterbacks are falling because the receivers are getting pushed up. So I think part of it's just like there was another puppy, all the receivers jumped another 5 picks, and the quarterbacks and the running backs fell again.
Yep. We are on the clock. JT, Aiyuk, Adams, both ranks and ADP here. Who do you like?
I think Aiyuk or Adams.
Let's see here. You know what? Let's get the bull case for Adams. Shawn gave us the bear case on the previous episode, and we took Aiyuk. So talk why you're still willing to go Davante Adams here.
I don't have a ton of Davante Adams. I'm not super bullish on him, but he's just like, the dude is really, really good. He's still really good. He hasn't shown any signs of falling off. And I think your bull case comes down to Antonio Pierce getting his best players the ball. Like that when he came in, he was like, we're going to feed Davante Adams. We're going to feed Josh Jacobs. And yeah, I mean, he still had 1.97 yards per out run last year with Aiden O'Connell and, a little dose of Jimmy Garoppolo. So I don't know. I'm not super bullish on Adams, to be honest, but it's just sort of like a bet on this guy who's one of the best wide receivers ever, still being really good.
Yeah, and it's like the other way to think it through are like the different scenarios for the Raiders. And generally, if there's a lot of risk for a team being bad, you want to play it through the cheaper pieces, maybe Zamir and Brock at those prices. But there are the scenarios where you say, like, what if they're really good? What if like Brock is really good and Adams is really good and Minshew is just, dealing or whatever? Like in those scenarios, like you are going to want to be in on a perceived undervalued offense that smashes expectations. So I do think I like thinking it through, like if from an overall portfolio, play it through the cheaper pieces, but then, hey, let's build out a team here where the Raiders really surprise everyone and Davante Adams is just cooking again.
Yeah, and I think like one thing I do that makes me nervous about Adams is more of a guy that I'm nervous about fading than someone I'm, all that bullish on. But like, Pierce doesn't seem like he's going to be, afraid, rolling over, just like, let's get this game over with. Let's go home. Let's not have an embarrassing loss. Like they do seem like they're willing to fight for wins, kind of in a more Dan Campbell-y type of way. Like they're not, even if they're undermatched, they're going to try to win the game. So that would be part of it, is maybe they don't surprise people with their win total, but they surprise people with how feisty they are. Yep.
We are about to pick at 3-7. We start AJ Brown and Davante Adams. We'll see what Snatch Catchers does here by ADP. It's Kerrane by ranks. It's Diggs. Do you want to do the all veteran wide receiver start here?
I think Diggs is pretty good. I was going to suggest Kupp because we kind of bet against Puka in a sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Diggs.
Yeah, let's do Diggs here. Brown, Davante, Diggs, partying like it's 2021 with this roster here. And I can continue to see Kerrane fall. I almost got him at 312 in my first draft. He went 311. So I don't mind getting the Kerrane shares on the back half of the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kerrane is a very, very acceptable detour here for, this team. I think that what makes it trickier is if we are trying to think about, a quarterback in the fourth, then I'm already regretting Kerrane, right?
Right.
If Hurts falls to us in the fourth, I'm like, I really wish we took Diggs. So it's just difficult to go non-wide receiver for 2 rounds in a row in 3 and 4.
Yeah, that really is the name of the game this year. It's like, you're not crazy for taking Kerrane here. You're not crazy for taking a quarterback here. It's just giving yourself the flexibility, understanding the tiers, understanding the runs, and how your team looks if you don't have that wide receiver firepower. And when you do have those 3 wide receivers to start, it gives you so much flexibility to basically go in any direction you want.
Yeah, but I mean, if we had Garrett Wilson or Puka, you get the correlation, but let's say even Garrett Wilson, I think Kerrane is a much easier click because you're not already thinking about, like, round 4 is like, we'll just take, George Pickens or Christian Kirk or whoever's there.
Yep. Some interesting wrinkles here. Kelsey, first tight end off the board. Allen goes unstacked. Pickens, Amari T, the other wide receivers off the board. Laporta does go. This feels pretty clearly Hurts, unless you got a Galbrain idea.
No, I think we take Hurts.
Yeah,
we've been setting this pick up since the very first pick.
We set it up. It's right at ADP. A couple picks past ADP, but like the Hurts and AJ Brown stack is probably going to be fairly popular just because it lines up ADP wise. But it feels hard not to correlate those 2 bets.
It's going to be popular in this period, but it strikes me as one of the features of drafting on July 1st is that this stack is available. I don't think it's going to be available like this on August 1st, or certainly not September 1st. Like
what's your thought that like Hurts gets pushed up to like the 3-4 turn?
Yeah. My thought is that Hurts moves up. I mean, maybe it's available, but in the middle of the 3rd, because these receivers are going to fall to some extent. Like when people come at, like, the running backs, all the stuff that we're like, oh man, this guy's here. There's going to be drafters who come in and just take all those guys, right? There's not that many people that are going to have no wide receivers through like 5 rounds in these rooms, but I think there will be more people that do that in August, and it'll change the ADP a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't know if we're going to see, like, I think the moves like Barkley coming up into more the early second, I could definitely see Kerrane and Henry, getting up to like
the
early
2-3.
3rd. Yep. I could definitely see, which is then, because basically we'll get back to where we started. Like, we had Tank Dell and Zay Flowers, like, very normally available in the early 4th.
Yeah.
Maybe those guys get pushed back there.
I think so. I think Barkley's more closer to the 1-2 turn. I think we see more starts like, where you're getting 3 running backs in a row. All that stuff.
Yep. All right, so we got our start. AJ Brown stacked up with Hurts. Also have Davante Adams and Diggs. Someone asked an interesting question in the chat a second ago. Where do you think Diggs would be going ADP wise if he were still in Buffalo? It's kind of a fascinating...
in the big board, I was into Diggs at the 2-3 turn, when he was still on Buffalo, and at that time, Josh Allen, kind of to the point of the quarterbacks rising, was going in the early 3rd. And so I was like, well, why am I not doing this stack? This is sweet. And obviously the answer is because it's going to get traded. But I mean, I think probably the 2-3 turn is where he would have settled, maybe on the 3rd round side of that. But I mean, I don't know. It'd be, especially in this environment, it'd be hard for him to go much later.
Yeah. All right. We are about to pick here at 5-7. Josh Jacobs is the ADP faller. Man, the wide receivers are kind of gross. Hollywood Brown has... What do you think?
Pitts?
Yeah, let's just do it. Yeah, I like that call. If this wide receiver tier just flattened out, just grab the tight end and then know that we'll take whatever wide receiver is available at 66.
Gretch was kind of pushing us to that type of move on ship chasing a few weeks back. And I wasn't really there yet with Pitts, of just seeing him like, hey, all the other guys go, let's just grab Pitts. But I think he was right. Like, Pitts is going to keep moving up. He's another one of those guys where I'm like, not that overweight Pitts. I think he's going to keep rising. And I don't want to like deal with 4 or 5 turn Pitt. Like with Pitts flips Mark Andrews, I'm going to freak out and be like, what are we doing? But I think it probably happens. So I don't, I want to be at least even when it does.
Well, this spot seems like the perfect. I'm glad I kind of was just like, wide receiver. But like Keenan, Jaden Reed, Xavier Worthy, those are all guys I like to click at 55, and they're all off the board because normally Brown is going up there. We've now seen Ridley really rise. So let those guys come off the board and then get back into a wide receiver tier you like a bit more. And you're just kind of doing the 2v2 of like, I get the wide receiver I like and Pitts comes back. Well, there's no wide receivers I like. Just grab Pitts now.
Right. And I actually think the 6th round is pretty rich now it's 1 round and you only get 1 guy. But that I do like the 6th round for a wide receiver.
Yeah. And yeah, lots of different ways we can go here. Our team, we got the Hurts and AJ Brown stack. We got Davante Adams and Diggs. We got Kyle Pitts. Some grown ass men on this team so far. Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas, Godwin, Hollywood Brown are the wide receivers off the board. The 12 hole takes Jacobs and Cook. The chat pointing out the poor team in the 4 hole takes Zay at 28, gets Andrews at 45, and then gets sniped on Lamar Jackson unstacked to a drafter who started with 3 running backs through 4 rounds.
Oh, God.
That one hurts.
That is brutal.
Yeah. That's one of those where you're like, yeah, I did read that article where Pat, dared people to snipe me on the quarterback, but I actually just reject that premise. I
didn't mean like this.
Yeah,
this is not what I meant. This is extremely painful, and I'm sorry.
Hopkins, Ladd would probably be the picks for me. Do you have anything else you see?
I like Hopkins. We could do Ladd for a little dose of youth.
Is this just your way of setting up?
What are you talking about? I'm just saying our room's a little old, You
know what? This is why I'm gonna let Pat set up the long con. When I did one of my videos and I was talking about how the elite tight end with the rookie quarterback is kind of hard to pull off because so many of those guys have the week 14 bye. Jalen Hurts is the perfect elite quarterback to pull it off with because he has the week 5 bye. He's one of the dicier ones to pull it off for because they might be a 0.
No, Josh Allen is the guy.
Josh Allen's the perfect one. Yeah. In that case, I should have taken Hopkins. No, I don't mind Ladd there. I think I'm going to be underweight Ladd, but in that range, I do like. Who do you like more right there, Rashee Rice or Ladd? Because Rice is streaming up boards. Yeah,
Rashee Rice. Yeah. Drew Davenport had a post over the weekend on Rashee Rice. And it sounds like he thinks things are moving towards he said he's going to put out percentages later in the week, but he's like he seems to think that we might not even get a suspension until next year. But he says I'm continuing to draft Rice as though he'll play 12 plus games this year and possibly the whole season.
Yeah. That's what I'm working on a video on the Deposit Kingdom this week, the players who are discounted for, suspension or injury purposes. And I was looking into it and, Hayden had written it up too, how there's trials set for, I think it's some of the civil cases, but not the criminal case or whatever. So I'm using the example of, remember like Kamara, it took a full year for the trial to even take place. We just see this stuff get punted over and over. It seems like the market's reacting accordingly though, because in every single draft, Rice seems to be going early and earlier.
Yeah, I think people are waking up to it. But he should probably be going in the middle of the 5th round.
Yeah.
So I think he still has room to rise.
We've seen quite a big wide receiver run take place here. After us, Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, Christian Watson, JSN. We're about to be on the clock. Keon Coleman, kind of the last of the wide receivers in this tier, or we got some running backs. How do you think we do it?
I I don't know. What's your thought here?
Probably Coleman.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and if we had a big running back value, like if we had gotten like the Rashad Fall or the Kenneth Walker, I think I'd lean that way. This is, again, one of the only issues with it's similar to taking the first running back faller. You know, you take Hurts and then CJ Stroud's available at pick 79 with Diggs too.
Right.
But you start to do that 2v2 and you're like, we could have had, I guess the wide receivers were pretty wiped there too. You're probably looking at Christian Kirk or something.
Which is fine, but yeah. I mean, if the 2v2 of Hurts, Coleman versus Christian Kirk, Stroud, both stacked, you probably do take the Stroud side, but Stroud's falling sometimes to the 7th, but it's not common that he would be there in the middle of the 7th.
Yeah. Yeah. D. Owens surprised to pass on Stroud at pick 80. It's a way to get really buried. I just don't. There's very few times I want to be doing the double elite QBs. And even Stroud at that spot was, I guess he was 14 pick ADP value. I still think I need even more to justify 2 elite quarterbacks.
I do too. I mean, you can't like go back in time and take, you know what I mean? Like you did it. You took Hurts. Like you took Hurts in the 4th round. It's Hurts as well. Like he's going to rush for a bunch of touchdowns. Like if he pays off the ADP, he's going to hit your lineup very consistently. So it just doesn't work that well. I think in the 8th round, maybe I would be like, all right, let's do it. Cause at that point you're kind of pushing it running back a little bit more. So I don't know. I think there is a point obviously at which I would take Stroud, but I think it just makes more sense to grab that 5th receiver there.
Yeah. We also have the other thing I think through is like, do we have any other quarterback outs? It's like, we have Kirk Cousins, we have Justin Herbert, we have the inevitable backdoor Drake May stack. Like there's a lot of other flexibility there. Zamir White gives us another Las Vegas Raider. He looks like the best pick. Zach Moss. Anything else you like?
I like Zamir White. We're betting on the Raiders to be competent.
Yeah.
They want to establish. So I think it actually correlates pretty nicely with Adams.
And this goes back to the exact scenario that I was kind of thinking through when we took Adams of like, all right, we are playing this build as if the Raiders are much better than expected. And like, how does that Davante Adams tide lift all the boats? Well, one of those big boats would be Zamir White.
Yeah. Well, Zamir White's, I'm actually drafting like a fair amount of Zamir White right now. He's a young back. He was efficient last year. He's athletic. He's big. There's like really no competition at all for early down work. I mean, it's like Alexander Madison, who got exactly one shot to not be a backup and was immediately a backup again. So, yeah. I mean, he's not the type of guy that I would normally get excited about taking, but because he usually goes in like the 4th or 5th round, and I'm like this resume is actually not that strong. Let's cool it a little bit. But when you can get him in the 8th round, like,
yeah,
I don't know. I thought he was going to be much more expensive. I thought he was going to be someone I'm like fading with, like, oh my God, the market's lost their mind on this guy. He's played like 4 games, but I don't know. In the 8th round is your RB1. Seems pretty nice.
Yeah, and when I had done, I think the exercise must have been in like Big Board where I was like anticipating like the biggest risers and stuff. I thought Zamir White was going to be moving in the other direction, and he's been falling.
Yeah, I don't really get it.
So interesting pick here at 9-7, about to be on the clock. Curtis Samuel could do the like Bills without Josh Allen with Keon Coleman. There's also some running backs, Pollard, Brian Robinson gives us a little correlation opposite Pitts. What do you think?
I like Brian Robinson for the correlated play, and I think he's just a good pick.
He also, a double whammy, Washington plays Philly in week 16. We're obviously building out a stack there. So get that week 16, week 17. Speaking of which, do you want to mention the article Sacrilegious had recently on Leg Up about the week 16 versus week 17 stuff?
Yeah, so he did a toy game simulation looking at week 16 and week 17 correlation. very, very interesting article. Basically, the week 16 correlation is helpful, but he notes that we don't have like a do better lever for week 16, which there's been some work. Leone's talked about this. Neil Farley's talked about it, where like week 16 is actually potentially more important than week 17 if you were just gonna, do better in 1 week. But we don't have that lever. We've got a game stacking lever, and some of the advantages of game stacking is that you get these ultra high end outcomes. And you've talked a bit about this as well. And it's like, it's backed up by the math where yes, week 16 is important, but getting that potential for a 99th percentile outcome, it doesn't do anything for you in week 16. It does potentially a lot for you in week 17. So it is just this thing of like, if you're doing week 17 correlation at the expense, if you're doing week 16 correlation at the expense of week 17 correlation, I don't love it. And in a case like this, where you're getting Brian Robinson and he correlates twice, hell yeah, that's perfect.
Yep. I like that thought there. I had another thing I was going to say, but we are about to pick here. This is Dallas Goedert. Seems like the clear, get that double stack here and be done at tight end.
I love it.
That is the one nice thing about the Hurts build is, and maybe I'm just running hot, but I feel like I never get sniped on Goedert when I have Hurts.
He's not a fun click without Hurts.
Yeah.
I was just in a slow puppy and he was sitting there and I'm like, nope, I'm not doing it. He's just not, if you don't have Hurts, he just is not fun.
Yep.
The other thing that Sacrilegious notes in his article is that team stacking at this point, like team stacking potentially might be underrated. Like just making bets on the teams you've already taken, right? And even stuff like the Zamir White, Davante Adams, like that's really cool, And if we add a Saint, great. If we don't, like it's not that important. We're betting on the Raiders to go off in 15, 16, or 17 and have a good season, right? So we can win like several different ways with a Zamir White, Davante Adams stack. It's not just that one singular week. And even in that week, betting on one team is cleaner than betting on, one team to go off and then push a piece on the other side. So team stacking is something to kind of underline when you're thinking about doing builds.
And when I was working on my video, and I think you and I were even talking this through a little bit, like to me, that's how I want to win my week 16 pod, because I have a couple really big team level bets and that team crushes. And just because, Hurts drops 35, AJB, Goedert, maybe we tack on like a Will Shipley, whatever. It's like, this is what is propelling me. And then I get to week 17. It's like, all right, let's pull that bring back lever to get the nutty game.
Yep.
All right, we are on the clock here. Gus is a teammate.
I think Gus makes a lot of sense. We're getting him past ADP.
Yeah.
Stacked with Lad.
Yeah, we'll do Gus and Lad here. We also, coming back around, we leave both of the Cowboys running backs there. Maybe we get one of them as a bring back to our Philly stuff. Also going to be kind of entering a sweet spot for some of these rookie wide receivers as well.
Yep.
Here's the team so far. We got Jalen Hurts at quarterback, 3 running backs, Zamir White, Brian Robinson, and Gus Edwards. Man, look at what's the combined 40-yard dash average right there.
Zamir White's actually, he ran a 4.4.
Did he really? I'm shortchanging him. AJ Brown, Davante Adams, Stephon Diggs, Ladd, and Keon Coleman. Tight ends, Kyle Pitts and Dallas Goedert. I wanted to pull up a comment from Billy Jones earlier that I kind of wanted to hit on. He asked if this is it dumb to dislike Coleman on Hurts builds? Because it's hard to see the universe where Coleman smashes and Allen doesn't, so you can benefit from picking the right elite QB and the other falling. I do love that thought.
I think it's the exact opposite. It's that I have Hurts, so Allen can go. The world where Allen can do stuff is now expanded. Like I'm not fading Allen so much because I have Hurts. So Hurts is going nuts. He's going nuts to AJ Brown. Third touchdown to AJ Brown type of game, and then Hurts ran in a couple. Right. So Allen had a good game. Great. I don't care. I don't care. In fact, I'm psyched. I have Keon Coleman, so hopefully it flows through Coleman. So to me, it's just like it actually raises the bar for what Allen is allowed to do. That's how I'm much more likely to stack up in elite. Like if I have, let's say I have Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce, I'm trying to get like Stroud on those builds if I have Tank Dell too, because I need a quarterback to help cover Mahomes, who is having a good game.
All right, lots of options here. We could be done at quarterback with Herbert, or we could get our Dallas bring back with one of the running backs. What do you think?
I don't know. Where are you at?
I think we do a Dallas running back.
Okay.
You want to do the all dust team?
Let's do all dust. Yeah.
All right, there it is. This is Zamir White, Brian Robinson, Gus Edwards, and Zeke Elliott. If there were old school ship chasing fans who started watching me and Pat stream drafts back in the day, they could have never envisioned a world where we would have drafted these 4 running backs.
I mean, it's the 11th and 12th for potentially 2 starting running backs with goal line rolls.
Well, this is the thing too. Like the 2 green lights I want when I'm making these picks are correlated and past ADP, and Gus and Zeke hit both of those check marks in back-to-back rounds.
Yeah. I mean, Zeke, you're going to trust him in pass protection and he has a goal line roll. So
no principles anymore. Exactly.
I think he's good in the 12.
Here's the team. I think we're doing good, like draft capital wise. We got Jalen Hurts as our elite quarterback. Good there. Up to 4 running backs now. Zamir, Brian Robinson, Gus Edwards, Zeke Elliott. This team is not lacking early season touches. Wide receivers, AJ Brown, Davante Adams, Stephon Diggs, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, tight end Kyle Pitts, and Goedert. I actually think someone was asking, like, are you scared about the Ladd and Keon on the same team, 2 rookie shaky profiles? Is there a better pairing than Gus and Zeke with Ladd and Keon Coleman?
No, we're just going to shift points from running back to wide receiver over the course of the season.
Exactly.
I thought maybe Herbert would come back there, but he gets scooped.
Yeah, Herbert went to... Did he go unstacked? Unless this guy thinks Keenan Allen's still on the Chargers. Oh, no, Josh Palmer. And he thinks Mike Williams. He's just doing the old...
Oh, wow.
No, he did get Josh Palmer there. It would be fun. I want to make like a rankings list of like the stacks that are like the least fun, but like line up well. Like one for me would be like Dak and Jake Ferguson without CD. And it's like Josh Palmer without Herbert. I'm like, fine. But like, I can't get excited about it. So Kirk, another quarterback we could be done with. Algier gives us both a teammate and week 17, more correlation there. Mooney, if you wanted to set up a double with Kirk.
We probably want to do Kirk. We didn't get Polk. We didn't set up the Patriots side. This is just gonna be a little weird. We're done at tight end, so we can't do Hunter Henry. So the Drake May backdoor is a little weaker then. So
yeah, and I think that's smart. I was going to suggest, like, if we did, I mean, I barely selected Darnell Mooney this year, but the Drake London drafter is at the turn behind us and only has 1 quarterback. So it seemed very unlikely they were going to pass on Kirk twice there.
Yeah. And, you know, I love setting up but we missed out on Polk. So you can't force it.
Well, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. I mean, I missed the date. Polk, you used to be able to get at ADP, and in this economy, that is no longer possible.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm a long way from feeling that Polk is too expensive.
Yeah. What's your split on as sacrilegious floats a little? I assume this is a Javon Baker needle here.
This is KJ Osborne.
Oh yeah, I did see that athletic report. I included that in the Fantasy Life newsletter today.
Sacrilegious has been touting KJ Osborne for months, and we're all like, "What?" And then apparently he's a starting wide receiver on the Patriots, so he was right all along.
I know. It is funny. Like, I do think if May is just a total smash, it's like there's probably one big winner between like Polk and Baker, probably one big winner between like Osborne and Bourne, and probably like one big winner between like Pop Douglas and Hunter Henry. Like, you know, like it's just figuring out, you know, which of those guys are all the right ones together.
Well, I should be covered.
You've covered them all. The board.
I've got a lot. I got a lot of all. Let's see. Let me see my Patriots exposure. Yeah, I'm at 22% Baker, 21% Polk, 19% May, 16% Henry, 14% Douglas, 10% Gibson, 7% Stevenson. That'll actually come up with my puppies. I've been taking them a lot.
Let's hear the Bourne and Osborne. Are you a true
Bourne at 5%? I have not taken Osborne yet since.
Wow.
I haven't taken him since the big board. When I did take him a couple times in the big board.
There you go. We're at a 2-4-5-2 here. Some interest. So Gibson, if we wanted a Patriot, and then we're kind of in some.
What do you think about Vidal? And we're done at running back.
Little handcucking here past ADP.
A little handcuck.
Okay.
We got that Chargers back.
Let's do it. Yeah, I think literally the only concern here, I'm noticing we have a ton of week 5 buys, but not so much with our running back room. I think we can do that. And just pray that J.K. Dobbins isn't a thing, and we're good. Yeah, the chat is on fire with KJ Osborne and Kendrick Bourne talk. I do think those guys, probably more so Osborne, like play the guy getting buzz who's healthy, right now. Maybe if you are taking some Bourne, flip that to Osborne right now.
Maybe, although to me, the guy who's getting buzz who's healthy is Pop Douglas.
Yeah.
That's the guy that I'm trying to prioritize a little bit more. I'm trying to cool off a little bit on Baker, take more Pop Douglas, and then also take more Polk. Polk and Douglas and actually Henry are my favorite ways to play it right now. I mean, Osborne does strike me as like, if we get too low on Baker and then he turns into something, KJ Osborne is a reason not to take him is going to feel very silly in retrospect. Like remember, who was the dude that played ahead of Justin Jefferson week 1? Do you remember who I'm talking about?
Say that again.
Remember in Justin Jefferson's rookie year,
yeah,
he fell like a lot. Like he was going in like the 10th round because he wasn't going to start week 1. And Olabisi Johnson.
Yeah.
Olabisi Johnson was running ahead of Justin Jefferson. This was true. He really was. But turns out that didn't matter. Turns out that was a silly reason.
Also, turns out you should have been drafting Jalen Reagor over him.
It also turns out you shouldn't be drafting Jalen Reagor. Olabisi Johnson later ran ahead of Jalen Reagor.
Pretty brutal run for kind of wide receiver flyers coming off the board. Mims, Franklin, Corley, McCaffrey. I was kind of eyeing McCaffrey, teammate with Robinson in a nice little bring back week 17 there. We could do I think this is probably a wide receiver pick.
Yeah.
We could reach for Baker. No correlation with Demarcus Robinson. A little correlation with Rashad Bateman, who I haven't been clicking much. What do you think?
Do we have? Yeah.
I think it's probably Bateman or Baker.
Yeah, let's do. I don't really care. One of those two is fine.
Let's do Baker. Baker as a way to draft KJ Osborne later. No. I mean, I just for some reason I just can't see it with Bateman. It's been hard for me. Maybe I should have been more open to it there on a past ADP, but we didn't have super strong correlation. I guess Diggs opposite week 17.
Diggs, yeah.
But we've also have a pretty big bet now on the Chargers, so I feel like that week 17 is even more important if we're trying to do that.
I agree, and I do like it when you're thinking specifically for bringbacks. I do like a rookie. Like the bet is literally week 17 now. Yeah. So it makes more sense to make that bet a rookie.
So structurally, we're at a 2-5-6-2 here. This isn't the worst time to swing back. I kind of glossed over a Demarcus Robinson, but I think with these 3 rookies here, McConkey, Keon Coleman, Baker, we could, eat our vegetables with a wide receiver pick here.
I agree, but he just went. But I would also be fine with Michael Wilson if you wanted to do. He's kind of another vegetable wide receiver pick. Yeah,
no specific correlation stuff, but he is It's so funny that like Michael Wilson feels like a boring pick, and yet this is a second-year wide receiver on an offense everyone universally likes, who flashed significant single weeks upside in year one, and we're just like, yeah, we could take Michael Wilson.
Well, I don't think you want him very much because you're talking him up right before we pick.
What are you
afraid of?
I've got a good touch for it. Yeah, we can get him, and he's 10 picks past ADP.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's grab Michael Wilson here.
Yeah, and I've talked about this on Ship Chasing, but like the Zay Jones stuff, like Zay Jones is probably just a backup. He's not very good, and he's never been very good.
Yeah. Thank you, Consigliere. This is why we took him, because we're going to have the Javon Baker, Michael Wilson show in week 15.
What do you think about this being a 3 quarterback build?
I mean, this is a similar spot we ended up last week where we have, I think, kind of a luxury pick.
Yeah.
Because we have 2 more picks. We could pretty much be done at every position. So how do you feel about the running backs? White, Brian Robinson, Gus, Zeke, and Vidal.
I think we can totally be done. I think if we wanted to add one more, we could. I think as far as you're thinking about luxury picks, like a 3rd tight end and a 6th running back probably make a lot more sense than the 3rd quarterback. So fully kidding there, but
I think my favorite luxury pick, maybe I should wait to discuss it.
I have a luxury pick in mind in the 18th.
Okay, and I have a luxury pick that I feel like we could take with either one of these.
Okay. What position is your luxury pick?
Running back.
That's mine too.
Should we? You want to give another hint?
He's a rookie.
So's mine.
Okay. We landed on the same luxury pick here. He's correlated.
Why do I feel like we're having phone sex right now? Yes, so's mine. Does his name rhyme with Bill Nipley?
Yes, it does.
Can we just take him now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Where are you, Will? Where are you? There you are. All right. That was there's the clip, Lou. Pat and Pete having phone sex about selecting Will Shipley.
Wow. Same page. With the Ducks playing too.
This should be behind the paywall. You guys are lucky. This is free for the whole world. Oh my God. I'm glad we were on the same page there, Pat. It would have been like quite the edge if we were like inching to it. And at the last second, you're like, Isaac Correndo.
Yeah, what?
All right, but now that we got our 6th running back, we really can go in any direction. I do just want to say I did Best Ball After Dark with your colleague at Legendary Upside, Daniel Raz, on Saturday night. Jalen Hyatt went off the board before we could take him, and he did get me to draft Darius Slayton. So I've gotten my Darius Slayton share for the past week. Check out that episode, by the way. You guys get access to that if you are YouTube members. Daniel, a very sharp guy. We had a lot of fun on Best Ball After Dark.
Nice. I want to check that out later.
All right, Pat. So 2672. I do think we can go in about every direction. Drake May did get taken. We could do either, like a Rondell Moore or a New England wide receiver as kind of like another stack or Rondell Moore is stacked up with Kirk. I don't mind that.
That makes a lot of sense. I think kind of a eat your vegetables wide receiver to some degree, given that we have the 3 rookies, makes sense. And he's directly stacked with Kirk. So
yeah. Yeah, Lube would have been the other fun one. If that's where I kind of thought you were going, Pat. I think Rondell Moore is perfect here. Get that double stack with Kirk.
Yeah.
We already got the correlation with Washington and gets us that last kind of wide receiver piece here. So here's the team, Pat. 2682, Jalen Hurts and Kirk Cousins at quarterback, Zamir White, Brian Robinson, Gus Edwards, Zeke Elliott, Kimani Vidal, Will Shipley, wide receivers, AJ Brown, Davante Adams, Stephon Diggs, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Javon Baker, Michael Wilson, Rondell Moore, tight ends, Kyle Pitts, and Dallas Goedert. This is like a super polarized as far as like vets and like really like black box rookies here.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Vidal and Gus, right? We didn't have the Zeke and Dowdle together, but I am willing to take them together. There's like a couple pairs this late where I'm just like, give me potentially I just get Chargers backfield in the Greg Roman offense. That sounds pretty good. So we didn't necessarily need to go 6 running backs. We could have just gone 5, but then okay, so if we're good to go 5 and we take a correlated rookie, that's a pretty good use of a luxury pick. So I think we did this last week too, where we're like, we could stop at 4 and then we took 6. So, but I think as long as you're like, you know, you wouldn't want to go as your running back 6 there with like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire or something. I don't think you want to
Right.
take a big swing, and that's what we did with Will Shipley as being a rookie, and then obviously being correlated with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I really like how this one panned out. We have some big team bets on Philadelphia and Atlanta. We got week 17 opposite our biggest team bets with Dallas and Washington. We got some team level correlation with Zamir and Adams. I mean, looking at all of our picks, I guess like some of our only one-offs is essentially like Diggs and Keon Coleman and Michael Wilson. Everyone else is correlated in some fashion, either with the team or week 17. So I like how that worked out.
Yeah, I love the Chargers bet. Chargers Patriots, mostly Chargers, but without the quarterback. And we have Hurts. So like we want Justin Herbert to have a big game. But also you're probably not beating Hurts, who's spiking to AJ Brown.
I'm laughing because the same dynamic happened with Shawn and I in our draft, where we reached for Devontae Walker and then Jalen McMillan slid past ADP and we got both. Like we took Javon Baker, ADP 193, we took about 175. Michael Wilson, ADP 175, we took at 186. We just flipped them and still got both of them together.
I would like the record to show that when David Kitchen called me on the randomizer and asked for a 15th round pick, I suggested Javon Baker, to which Pete replied, "This isn't the 18th round, it's the 15th round." And yet, today, in the 15th round, I said, I don't know, Pete. You decide. And he took Javon Baker.
Life comes at you fast. And according to The Athletic, it should have just been KJ Osborne in the 18th round. That was
Yeah,
the
I
pick.
guess so.
Yeah. This is, I do like staring at the Ladd and Keon, 2 guys that both scare me, having them both on the same team. But I do think one of the main things I think with all of this stuff is like, how do the pieces fit together? And I'm making that video on the discounted players in this idea, if you are sacrificing early season production, how do you survive that? How do you get this team into the playoffs? How do you get, maybe a later breakout from Keon Coleman into your lineup? Being willing to take some of the, eating your vegetables picks, I think is a way to accomplish that.
Yeah, this team does not seem to sacrifice early season. I'm worried about the middle of the season. I'm worried
Middle?
about
You
week
have
8.
no one in the middle.
Yeah, because all these dudes are going to be dust by week 8. And I don't know that Keon Coleman's on the field yet. So that's where we might be in trouble.
I did think about that as far as the week 17 correlation with Zeke and Dowdle, which it's probably, in my head, it's so easy being like, okay, Zeke early, maybe he loses steam, and Dowdle late. But it's also so easy to be wrong about those things of how we think if you would have told me Zeke would have finished the season as a monster last year, I never would have believed you. And that's exactly what he was down the stretch for his cost.
Yeah, I mean, it's the pass protection thing. Like he's a good pass protector. So it's like he's just going to catch a bunch of dump offs. Like it really comes down to game script, I think. Dowdle's interesting for sure. Like he could be pretty good, but he also might be nothing. Like that's where maybe just Zeke is just he's eating snaps all season. He's got the goal line role, and Zeke plays through injuries. Like he's kind of the Iron Man. So I'm the burst has been gone, but I don't know. It's probably not as clean as just saying like, oh, he'll be the early season and Dowdle will be late season.
Yes. Tyler had to rewind. He got to watch the Will Shipley stuff. So this cost a super chat. Could you two stare in each other's eyes one more time and say
Yeah.
Will Shipley?
Just a regular comment? No.
No,
super chat.
You got to at minimum be a YouTube member, and then at least $4.99 for me to continue this. Let's see here. Consigliere does have a real question. Is UD still going to have the leaderboard even without the regular season prize? I doubt there will be a regular season leaderboard because there's really nothing to hawk. I know that there's going to be a leaderboard for the Underdog Cardio Club, which those drafts will be taking place.
And I'd assume for the marathon, right?
There has to be for the marathon.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I don't want to speak out of school. I guess I just don't know the use case for a BBM regular season leaderboard other than tilt your face off. You have the best team in the contest and there's zero payout for it.
Yeah, there used to be a huge prize for this, but not for you. That sounds horrible.
I did have that thought the other day where, again, good problem to have, right? You're for sure advancing this team, probably pretty good. Like even the year King Capital, the year you won and he had the best regular season team, I think he made it to like week 16. Like it was a juggernaut team. Like you want that, but man, to think like, oh, I would have won $1 million had this been last year. I think that would hurt. I think that would hurt a lot.
You think that would hurt?
This is also another good shout out. The Patrick Donovan BBMDB.com last year had a leaderboard. So maybe he will be able to pipe that in again this year. So you might be able to check that out. Highly recommend this site if you guys are wanting to look through data for last year. And I assume he's going to reboot it for this year as well.
Yeah, that site was so awesome last year, just like looking through teams that advanced as well.
Yeah.
You could actually like very quickly see the teams.
For sure. Yeah. And it's fun too, because you can, you could go look through, like you could do this. You do like Chase Claypool and
Right.
Let's see if we can see the top teams who drafted Chase Claypool. Let's see if this trick works. Was hit him with the gritty not on him? Oh, this is how they finished. Actually, it's not showing me who had the most. I think I would have to do did I spell his name right? The reason I don't know if I'm getting it right. Hit him with the gritty, Pat, is actually going to be my guest on Best Ball After Dark this weekend. I'm going to get inside the mind of gritty.
Yes. I love it.
I'm excited for that. What are your plans for the 4th of July?
We're just we're going to be, so my parents are in town.
Nice.
And we've got some friends that are going to be visiting as well. So we're just going to do like a little fireworks in the park kind of vibe.
Wow. Sounds very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I think we didn't even really get to discuss it. We're not going to have a ship chasing on Thursday, so probably no ship chasing this week, but we need to get in the lab and we'll be announcing some of our upcoming content plans for ship chasing in the near future. And then Pat, you're going to be doing ADP chasing today at 3:30 with Sam and Davis. And you guys have a fun premise on tap for today's show.
Yeah, they decided that they wanted to hear me talk more about the Patriots wide receivers, I guess, because we're going to be talking about who the next Puka Nacua is. And I don't know how I'm possibly not going to talk about multiple Patriots wide receivers in that conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was titling the YouTube video, hunting or digging for this year's Puka Nacua. And like, you'll always hear people go like, there's not going to be a Puka this year. And it's like, yeah, probably, but we should try to find him if he is, right? Like, are we allowed to do this exercise? Or do we just say nothing matters, draft whoever you want because there's not going to be another?
It is funny. The guy in the last round comes out of the third day of the draft, and he has the best rookie wide receiver season ever. And a popular takeaway is, don't even look for it again. Okay. I think I might though.
And I think like the narrow definition of there's not going to be another Puka this year is like that exact same archetype from his draft capital and his situation, blah blah blah. But I will tell you, there is going to be a few wide receiver smashes from late in the draft that I will bet a lot of money on. That's who we're trying to find. It's just easier to wrap your head around saying I'm going to try to find this year's Tank Dell or Puka Nacua.
Well, also wasn't because Tank Dell is also sort of a Puka level hit in a set, not quite to that level. And then also like we're not going to get another Amon Ra? Wasn't Amon Ra not supposed to happen again? And then Puka is like literally better than that. So feels like maybe we should try to find these guys.
Yes, and I will once again, just because I'm a masochist, I'll pull this up. I've referenced this in a few pieces of content, but here was my article on Fantasy Life, May 25th. 2023, titled 2 Deep Rookie Wide Receivers. Just me writing the old newsletter talking about Texans wide receiver Tank Dell making waves and Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua making waves. And how did I process this information, Pat? By not drafting them. Despite literally writing about it on May fucking 25th, 2023. It was right under my nose and I didn't do it.
I mean, it was under your nose because you were typing about them. Why didn't you draft them?
It's absurd. It is interesting to kind of like go back and read these reports. So this was from May 24th. Another note from OTAs. Very intrigued to see how third round pick Tank Dell develops. Yesterday, Tank was CJ Stroud's favorite target, 4 targets and 3 catches, like actual, data from training camp, which is always nice. Tank's ability to get in and out of his breaks is at a high level. Want to see how he overcomes his size concern. Spoiler alert. He overcame it. And then this was the blurb from Jordan Rodriguez, one of the best beat reporters in the league. She got asked about Van Jefferson and who to keep an eye on. And she mentioned Puka. He has come in and taken ownership of the playbook and tried to learn the best he can. You can just see how it translates on the field. He's been having a great 2 days that he's been out here. So maybe a little less concrete compared to the Tank blurb, but the breadcrumbs were there, Pat.
Ask someone about Van Jefferson and they bring up Puka is always, now that's even better if it's the coach, but it's still telling when it's like, what do you think about Van Jefferson? Well, let me tell you about Puka Nacua.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
All right.
I know. The Puka one's there's something, we're going to talk about this later, but like, there's something about, we have this feeling of like, nah, it can't be that guy. It can't be that guy. And there is a guy. It's not on the Patriots. There's a guy I'm going to be talking about later that I think it's time to keep an open mind to.
All right. Well, will you DM him to me first before you steam him out of oblivion? I would appreciate that. All right. I'm going to let Pat go. We are going to be bringing on our special guest for this morning, a man who knows his way around grinding the news. It's, of course, Adam Levitan from ETR. So, Pat, we will catch you later. Levitan, welcome to Best Ball Breakfast.
What is Best Ball Breakfast? You get on here every Monday and you do 4 drafts. Is that really what's going on here?
Yeah, and I might ask you to just talk to the chat by yourself so I can go to the bathroom. No, I think I'll be able to survive. But yeah, that's exactly what we do here. And I've been rotating the fourth or the final guest. Last week I had JJ, late round QB. And I'll just warn you, Adam, people love wide receivers around here. JJ got buried in a wide receiver avalanche last week.
Yeah. It's especially important to make sure that you take your wide receivers higher on half PPR with no bonuses than you are in full PPR with bonuses. Very important point there.
Don't tell me you're going with the most old school boomer. Don't forget that Underdog's half point PPR. Adam, do you know that you start 3 wide receivers and only 2 running backs on Underdog? Have you gotten that news flash?
Oh man, sorry. Are you doing a BBM on every one of these 4 every week?
Yeah. Yep. Last year I streamed all 150 of my BBMs.
Right, I know that.
This year it's basically I'm streaming all of them because I've been doing 4 a week on here.
That's great.
How many Underdog drafts have you done this year? And I did hop us in the draft. We got the 1-3 here, Adam.
Let me check. So far on Underdog, I have done 36 drafts.
Okay. And have you been drafting a bunch on DraftKings as well, or are you saving those?
Yes. I would probably have twice as much on DraftKings probably.
What are the biggest differences for you that you notice when you're toggling back and forth between the 2 sites?
In terms of who I take or in terms of structure?
Yeah, maybe just like structure and strategy.
I mean, I just think it's so obvious on DraftKings what the right strategies should be. On Underdog, I find myself oscillating between different strategies, and people say stuff. I'm like, man, that actually makes some sense, even if it doesn't make sense in what has happened historically. So I think there's more ways. I think is you can win with more different ways on Underdog On DraftKings, I'm pretty firm that the way I like to play on DraftKings is the right way. And yeah, you can go ahead and take the chalk here. It's fine.
Tyreek?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I did upload the ETR ranks here, so you should feel at home with these, unless you are just so distrustful of your own staff.
No, we actually had a couple.
Socialist.
We had a couple tweaks this morning too, so I don't know when you uploaded these, but shouldn't be major differences. But a couple tweaks just on some positional stuff as people continue to lose their mind over wide receivers and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah, this is a good point by Chris. I just assumed I need to introduce Levitan. Is he a new amateur trying to bake into the fantasy world? Yeah, he's just this plucky upstart, he's more of a cash game bro. Now kind of curious about this world of best ball. And I thought I would bring it on, kind of a make-a-wish for him. He keeps DMing me, can I come on Best Ball Breakfast? Levy odd. Fine. So I did capitulate on that front.
Yeah, this is exactly my hopes and dreams, to be on Best Ball Breakfast doing a $25 underdog draft with Pete at 11 a.m. on a Monday. This is the pinnacle. Exactly.
Yeah, well, when this team ships, I'm sure you will be very interested to receive a $750,000 Venmo from me.
What's the max on Venmo? That would be quite a Venmo.
Buddy. We're about to find out. Thank you to Mark. He was gifted the Influencer 101 and CD Lamb, and then paid it forward by gifting 5 memberships to the channel. Thank you, Mark, for that. Levitan, do you find yourself, I know you've been drafting a bunch of best ball teams the past few years. You've had a lot of success in some of those DraftKings small field stuff. I'm always like, how much am I in this best ball bubble versus how much is the overall fantasy world getting sucked into this world? Do you have a gauge on, do you find people in your neck of the woods more interested in best ball than previously?
Yes. We had kind of moderate hopes for our best ball subscription, which we kind of launched a new thing for this year and tried to put a lot more effort and time and people into it. And I've been pleasantly surprised by how many people are interested. It's only $39, so I think that helped in some way. But yes, more people than I expected have signed up for that, and that's great. And I think that more people are starting on it earlier, and more people are into it in May and June than they were before.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people who are way more on top of things than they've ever been before. We did start with Tyreek Hill. We're about to pick at 210, looking at ADP, Adams, Barkley, Evans, Smith. HN goes off the board. Do you like by rank Adams, Evans, Neighbors, Davante?
Yeah, I usually take Mike Evans here. I'm totally fine taking Davante Adams if you feel good about AOC or Minshew, and I do think there's holes in Mike Evans too with the Dave Canales stuff and his age, but I do take Mike Evans here as like one of the true alphas. But yeah, I'd be fine with Davante Adams there too.
No, if you had a slight lean there, Pat and I just did a team with Davante Adams, so we'll get a little variety here this morning and grab Evans, and then we'll see what comes back to us. What's your most typical structure in your underdog drafts? Are you doing a hero anchor RB build most of the time?
Typically hero, but I do get into spots where I take 2 running backs in the first 6, and I don't think it's that crazy when guys like, oh, sorry, we're on the clock here again.
Yeah, do you want the Barkley scoop or one of the wide receivers?
Yeah, I would be fine with DJ Moore or Barkley. I'd probably take Barkley more often here, but I'd be fine mixing that strategy there too.
Let's do it. I've been basically saying I have never clicked Barkley in the second round, but I've been grabbing him in the third when I get a chance.
Yeah, and I do think there's some chance that that there's less tush push stuff this year. Like some chance, a slight chance that there's less tush push stuff this year, and they'll be more likely to get Barkley more goal line stuff. But that's obviously going to be a huge thing where it's so touchdown heavy here on Underdog. I was curious what you think about 2 running backs when in that round, say we didn't take Barkley, and then you take 2 of the Rashad White, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, all those guys that go through that range there. Cause that's an idea that I thought made sense on Underdog. You can still get elite quarterback. You can still get 3 elite, maybe 2 to 3 elite wide receivers if you want. And then you can also get, which I don't think is really the dead zone anymore, would be 2 of those guys, Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, Pacheco, a couple others.
I like it. I've been wanting to do it more just because it pushes outside what's normally default for me, where it's you're getting the elite tight ends there. And then also it's like the last of the high upside wide receivers. So it's always been hard for me to do that, but I've kind of wanted to try like 3 wide receivers early. And then maybe you get like a faller. You do, like you said, Pacheco, Rashad White, and Kenneth Walker, and you draft those like 3 running backs in that range where you're normally not. I do want to mess with builds like that because it's easy to get in the habit of doing the same type of draft over and over. And I do want to experiment with that.
Yeah, especially if you're doing like 150, especially if you're doing for BBM where like you're going to need some insane luck, like for Kerrane, a guy almost dying on the field. Like you're gonna need some insane luck to really get there. So yeah, if I was doing 150, I would definitely be experimenting with some of that build where it's like, and I would consider Pacheco, Jacobs, James Cook, Rashad White, Joe Mixon, like that tier right there would be one that I would consider doing 2 of and trying to make it work. But yeah.
And that's why sometimes like the Barkley click or, if Jonathan Taylor slides, 4 picks in round 2 and it's like, yeah, this is a value. But what I've always noticed in my rooms is when you get that first faller, it means like some even bigger fallers are coming. And so then you start to do the 2v2 and you're like, all right, let's say in this room, I'm trying to think, maybe it was Henry. Let's say if Henry had slid and you're like, yeah, I'd probably prefer DJ Moore and Derrick Henry than Barkley and Terry McLaurin or whatever the 2v2 would be.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, Derrick Henry 37 versus Saquon 27 is a wide gap for sure. I never get Derrick Henry on DraftKings. I talked about this last week on Market Monday, but I never get Derrick Henry on DraftKings. But at 37 overall on Underdog, I would definitely take Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and Pat and I were talking about it. He just seems like such an obvious risers here in about a month. Like you're telling me the casuals aren't going to come in and say the big dog on the Ravens and Barkley on the Eagles and start slamming those guys?
Dude, Henry's ADP on DraftKings is like 22 right now. It's insane.
So this is kind of the spot you do get in. We see a little bit of a wide receiver run. Amari, Kirk, Pickens all come off the board. There is the aforementioned McLaurin and a couple of the running back values kicking around here. How would you want to navigate this?
Do we have the Lamar Andrews stack available to us?
We potentially do, and then it's tricky to know which way to try to play it. The other thing is do you feel comfortable only having 2 wide receivers through 5 rounds if we pull it off?
Let me see the wide receivers one more time. Keenan and
it's Keenan and Keenan by rank.
ADP would be Hollywood. I would be fine with Keenan or Hollywood, or I would consider going for Lamar. But yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go Lamar.
Okay, let me see if I can get it in time. All right, let's try to see if we can pull this off. What do you when you get Lamar and you get sniped? Are you still okay with kind of the backdoor stack options with him?
Yeah, it's not great, but I end up with Lamar likely Bateman is just what happens if you don't get Lamar Zay Andrews. I end up with Lamar likely Bateman, which is not ideal, but like on some of these Jaden Daniels or Lamar stuff, I'm fine with only one stack partner, so I'll end up with like Jaden Daniels Dotson and that's it, or maybe Jaden Daniels McCaffrey and that's it, or the Lamar stuff. It's not ideal, but I still think you can get there with Lamar single without Zay or Andrews. But yeah, hopefully we get Andrews back to us here.
Have you looked, do you do any Devontae Walker, or are you firmly on Team Bateman?
I prefer Bateman, but Prospect Bros would have to sell me harder on Walker. But yeah.
All right, let's see what Humble Legend does. I believe in the chat today does go Mark Andrews. I knew that backstab was coming.
All right, so let's just go Keenan then.
Yeah. I think it's... Obviously, you always want Andrews and Jackson together when possible, but I think structurally we'll feel a lot better about having the 3rd wide receiver here.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Structurally, for sure. I mean, like, I don't feel there's some wide receivers that, in drafts like this, and you get behind the wide receiver, people are like, oh, you're dead. I've been trying to think through wide receivers who go late. I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Who go later that I think can actually win, and like there's not that many of them on Underdog. One that I do like that goes a little bit later is Judy. If you get stuck, I just don't like taking wide receivers in that range that much, but let me see if there's some other guys here for people who get into wide receiver emergencies that I kind of like.
Yeah, we need these names around here for sure. Like, you're in like the Rashid Shaheed, AD Mitchell range?
Yeah, I'm Shaheed. I like. AD Mitchell is a tough sell for me. Let me see who I take here. God, yeah, you animals have gotten Shaheed up to 103 overall. My God.
Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett in that
God.
range.
So we have Josh Palmer as a value. He goes 105. Wicks 122, Judy 123, Downs 130, Gabe Davis 131, Dotson 135, and Polk 140. Those would be the ones that when I get into emergency that I mostly take at wide receiver. But obviously, ideally, we're cleaned up at wide receiver before that.
Yeah, and I think the thing I struggle with those guys is I prefer almost all of those names like in a correlated fashion as opposed to like, any of these wide receivers at the top. You can tell yourself a story of how they can have, a good season just in a vacuum. What's it like in the, I know you guys have an ETR rankings chat. Are you in there battling, trying to get Leone and these guys to adjust the inputs on some of these players, or do you save that for in season and DFS?
Oh no, buddy. This is constant. I wake up every day and it's just a war in the chat about how we should be adjusting guys inputs every day. And part of the ranking, part of our algo for the rankings is we do bake in some ADP by site. So that's why we have site specific rankings for all these, and we're baking in ADP. And so even like with the ADP getting pulled along and we're shifting our positional baselines to try to keep up, it's still like getting completely out of control here at wide receiver position.
Yeah, it is. This is pretty classic. I've been noting that Rashee Rice is really starting to move up, going 5 or 6 picks ahead of ADP in all of my drafts this morning.
Yes. I'm talking about him on Market Monday, which I'm about to record after this. I don't think anything's changed on Rashee Rice. I still think he's going to be suspended this year. I still think it's going to be at least 4 games. I've heard 6+. I've heard 8+. I think we're going to have news soon on Rashee Rice, but I'm fine with him. I just don't see how things have changed.
All right. The wide receivers are coming off the board. This might be last call to get one of these guys. If you have a flavor here, Kittle's kicking around. Anything else you like?
JSN would be my favorite, but if we hadn't taken Saquon, and that's the thing about taking Saquon, is that we could just get Joe Mixon here. And yeah, I think Joe Mixon is significantly worse than Saquon, but not 4 rounds worse, probably. And so, like Pete said, with the 2v2s, probably in hindsight, could have skipped on Saquon, given the way it played out, and gotten Mixon here instead.
Yeah, I actually don't mind the Barkley. I think it was maybe like the Lamar one that I would probably take back. But one little bonus here, we get JSN week 17 opposite Keenan Allen there. And you also have the chance that a guy like Mixon comes back again. Like that will happen sometimes.
Sure.
Deontay Johnson goes. So this does look like a running back pick. Unless you like Keon Coleman here. He's right at ADP too.
I do not like Keon Coleman that much.
White, if we want to do the Buck stuff, we got Big Dog Mike Evans.
Yeah, that's fine.
Who else? Who would be your preference?
Probably Rashad White, but we're going to get boxed out at tight end here too. I would consider Ingram here too, but yeah.
I switched it at the last second.
Oh, you switched it at the last second.
I was fine with either there. But I do think Bowers is likely in this room not going to make it back to 94.
Yeah.
Ingram also gives us another stacking partner, and we now have a few of those throughout the draft. So I don't mind that there.
Yeah. And I've put a lot of thought already into late round tight end, because this is how I've had all my success in best ball has been with 3 late round tight ends, and just trying to mix and match touchdowns from them and just figure it out. I think though that this year, especially on Underdog, and especially in lottos, I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. Think about your field size. Field size in BBM is so massive. You're going to need I think you're going to need a huge tight end score in week 17. And can I get that from 3 late round tight ends this year? It doesn't feel like it. So I've been doing more in large field. I've been doing more one of the top tight ends, and I would probably end it with Evan Ingram, but I do like Brock Bowers too. I think he's undervalued.
All right. Tyler has a question. Have you been in the lab with the PSM for 2024? Who's prematurely popping this year in the analytics?
Yeah, we the R&D team here at Gender Labs has been working on a lot of different stuff. The PSM is kind of on the back burner. I would say a guy that I think might actually be on the PSM is Malik Neighbors. I mean, this guy, This guy, I mean, if everybody didn't hate Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors would be going at like 2.4. You know, I mean, everybody just has there's such Daniel Jones haters out there. And I understand, but still.
Aren't you guys working on a project? I know you put out a tweet, like, what are the biggest narratives in NFL and fantasy? Are you guys close to debunking or solidifying some of those?
Yeah, we're working on that. Hopefully be ready to do a show on it in a month or so. And yeah, the idea has been floated. How can we test the PSM? How can we see if there's any correlation between hip swivel, hand size, foot size, bench press?
I really hope that you guys are actually paying Mike Leone and the team to do shower narrative analysis. Like, that seems like the logical evolution of ETR at this point.
The truth is that all these things, that you got to make sure the sample size is big enough. You know, we can test that, you know, shower narrative stuff, but we have sample size of like 10, and it includes like Mason Rudolph and James Washington and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. You know, it's like it's all over the place.
Did you weigh in on the Will Levis sex tape, or is that too risque for even your brand?
I saw it. Let's make a pick here, and I can give my take on the Will Levis tape.
Let's get back on track. All right, so we are, you know, a nice pick here, honestly, might be Lockett for us if we need a fifth wide receiver with JSN. Swift is falling a little bit. I don't think we need a quarterback here. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't feel the need to take Swift here. Nobody wants Swift at this point. He could make it back for sure. I'm fine with Lockett. Were there any stack options at quarterback or no? Oh, we already have Lamar. Sorry.
It would be Caleb. So I would say we just push him.
Once we have Lamar, then forget it. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think Lockett is a really nice price here. We already bet on JSN. It puts Geno in play, gets us that fifth wide receiver. I kind of like that pick there.
Yeah. So sorry, we're gonna pick again soon. What we have Lamar. How many? We have one running back, correct?
Yeah. So we got Lamar, Barkley, and Ingram at the onesies, and then Tyreek, Evans, Keenan, JSN, and Lockett at wide receiver.
Got it. What's the running back here? Like Zach Moss and stuff like that. Oh, he's already gone. Yeah.
Zach Moss is gone. By ADP, we're looking at Mostert, Pollard, Benson, Brian Robinson. I don't mind any of these guys here.
We're thinking about moving on Mostert a little bit, but I doubt we'll get him up.
He just went
above. Oh, okay.
Pollard,
what do we have by ranking? Pollard or Javonte?
By rank it's Javonte or Pollard.
Yeah, I go Pollard.
Yeah, let's do Pollard. Here he also week 17 opposite Evan Ingram. I like this price on Pollard. I'd written up in Fantasy Life. I've been liking taking even Pollard and Tajay Spears together if it breaks right.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. We have an article up about handcuffing at running backs too in BBM specifically. Yeah, so the Will Levis sex tape. So first of all, you can't tell it's him, right? All you see is cock. You don't see face. You don't see anything else. So you have to take it at its word that it's actually him. If it is indeed him, he's working with a good hog, man. So I'm in on Levis. The other reason that I'm in on the Levis stuff is they have been outrageously clear what their philosophy is going to be. Both their running backs are, like, to me, better in the pass game. Pollard and Spears. They give Cal Ridley $50 million. They go out and get Tyler Boyd. They bring in Brian Callahan, who's been among the most pass-heavy coordinators in the NFL. And so I talked to Thorne a bunch about the Titans offensive line. He thinks they're going to be significantly improved, which isn't saying much considering last year, but still, like, middle of the pack would be awesome for their offensive line. And so, yeah, I think that if Will Levis can play, he's going to have a good year. I don't know. Best hog breakfast. I don't know that Will Levis can definitely play, but if he can play, I think he's going to have success.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been talking a lot lately about, the cheap backdoor stacks, Carolina, Denver, New England. The thing that does make it hard, because Will Levis he's cheap. The running backs are cheap, but you do have to pull the trigger on one of Ridley or Hopkins, I think, early. So it's one of those where it's like, when I have one of those guys, I think about it a good bit, but when I don't, it's not actually the spot I'm like super excited to try to line up, because it's like, what, Chig and Tyler Boyd, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, for sure. I do it with the running backs a decent amount if I don't have Hopkins, but we're above market on Hopkins. We've been that way for the last month, so I have plenty of Hopkins here for sure.
Yeah. All right.
If I get into a quarterback hole here, by the way, if I take Jaden Daniels backdoors a ton if you get it, a quarterback hole. And yeah, look at this guy taking Jerry Jeudy at 114. Isn't his ADP like 130 or something like that?
Well, welcome to Best Ball Breakfast, buddy. This is what happens. This is what happens. I think we're doing good though. Like getting Lockett just slightly ahead of ADP. JJ and I had to make the Lockett click, but at like pick 75. Like that's how bad it got. So this is an interesting spot here. Would you close the loop at quarterback with Caleb 10 picks past ADP, or do you just sit on Geno or somebody later?
Once we have Lamar, I prefer to push it at quarterback.
Yep. So looking at rank, you got Goddard, Jacoby, Mike Williams, Gabe Davis, Josh Downs, Chase Brown. Anything jump out to you?
Yeah, I don't love those wide receivers. I would probably go Chase Brown or Quorum, whichever one you like.
Wow. I mean, Chase Brown's my most drafted player, so I'm never going to turn down someone else suggesting drafting Chase Brown.
Yeah.
What do you say to all the people that says he just had one good highlight last year and Zach Moss is going to own this backfield?
Well, that's not my concern as much as my concern is that they might not trust him on pass downs and Samaje Perine might be getting cut. I mean, you could be left holding a big Chase Brown bag of dust if Zach Moss gets the goal line work and Samaje Perine gets the pass down work. That's my biggest concern. But
yeah, I know it was. I think I was listening to you and Silva, which, by the way, Silva back on the pod. Yep. Great to hear talking about the Khalil Herbert thing and how there's rumors that he might get cut. It's like if we have one of these backfields destroyed because the Bears just randomly cut Khalil Herbert and then he signs and muddies one of them up, I'm going to be so pissed.
Yeah, I think Dameon Pierce is actually one to watch, but yeah.
For a potential cut or for Houston adding a third
cut or trade, but yeah, we'll see. They don't have
who
much
would be the second back there? Sorry, let's make this pick. Jacoby, Mike Williams, Gabe Davis, the running backs. You got Corum still on the board.
It would be Corum or Jacoby for me.
What do you think? We're at 3 running backs, 5 wide receivers. I think we can go either way.
I think I prefer the running backs later, so I'd probably go Jacoby.
Yeah, let's do Jacoby. I also kind of like, it's a little gal brain, but it's like we passed on Davante Adams for Mike Evans. Let's grab Jacoby on that team.
Yeah, little leverage there. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so all these people just show up to. So all these people in this room, they all show up just to draft and fuck each other on sniping and all having the same structure and stuff like that. Is that what goes on here?
Yeah, this is like, you could hop in a draft at 11 p.m. Eastern with a bunch of drunk people and no badges, or at 1 p.m. Eastern, literally 12 fucking red badges, not allowing any value or wide receivers or rookies to fall, and just hate yourself. And I choose the latter.
What a life. What don't these people have a job? Goddamn.
I've been getting some invoices from corporate America on them hemorrhaging work productivity due to 4-hour best ball breakfast streams. I know you've hopped on, you've done what? Herzig streamed some drafts for you guys. You've hopped on a little. I feel like you're always like reluctant to stream drafts.
No, I like doing it. I've done one myself. I did a UD $100. What was Dalmatian or whatever?
Yeah.
I did one of those on stream, which was cool. I think people like that. I'll do another one, but getting shamed for being jobless versions. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'll do some more streams for sure. I like doing them. I couldn't fathom doing 4, but yeah, I also, you're way better than me at like engaging the chat and drafting. Like when I'm doing a draft, I really like to concentrate, and maybe I'm not, it's not as entertaining as maybe it should be.
No, I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to avoid getting buried by an avalanche while being a truther about Will Levis's sex tape and not believing it's his hog until you get it actually verified on the blockchain. All right, here's a recap for the audio listeners who, for years, Adam, me stealing some of your catchphrases, it feels good to hear you now servicing the audio listeners these days, which I will do here. Lamar unstacked at quarterback, Barkley, Pollard, Chase Brown at running back, 6 wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, JSN, Lockett, Jacoby, and then Evan Ingram. We are back on the clock here, Adam. What do you see here?
Oh, I'm shocked that in this room nobody wants Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah, I take if in normal spots here, I take either Ty Chandler or Marshawn Lloyd. Those are 2 of my favorite running backs. I don't know what we have at wide receiver available to us, but
yeah, wide receiver, you're down into the QJ, Darnell Mooney.
Yeah,
Burton.
forget that. Yeah.
And if we're going to save a couple bullets for some Lamar stacking stuff, I think we just get the running back. So I grabbed Ty Chandler there, who I like a good bit as well.
So Marshawn Lloyd and Charbonnet both went.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Lloyd and there was a run there. Eckler, Rico, Jerome Ford, Lloyd, Kendre, Sharbs, all bang bang there in the 12th.
Yep. Do we have any stacks at quarterback available to us or no?
Well, Gino, with our 2 Seattle guys, is definitely in play. And then we missed out on Lawrence and Baker's also going to be in play. So I think we can push quarterback here.
Yeah.
We'll have to start thinking about maybe a second tight end option as well. You could do Cole Kmet and just like stack that up without Caleb Williams. But what do you think?
So I take Fant like every time, even when I don't have Gino. But I've been thinking more about in these large field ones, how many from one team do I want? I know Leone's worked on that some, but yeah. What do you have in queue?
Well, I can put Kmet in. Yeah.
Okay.
I think with an Ingram Kmet, I don't even mind if we tack on Noah Fant as a third tight end.
Yeah. Especially if we end up with Gino. If we don't end up with Gino, then I think it's fine to just go with 2.
Paul says we're drafting an ETR-ass team. That's what happens when you use the ETR ranks. You get an ETR-ass team here. That's a loving compliment, by the way. I love listening to the terror in Leone's voice when he talks about being scared about being underweight rookies because everyone's just pestering him. Why don't you have the rookies higher in your ranks?
Yeah, I know. It's like some of these rookies though, like we're higher on some of the elite rookies. Like we're way higher on Neighbors, but then people are like way higher on like the 8th wide receiver off the board. It's like there's a reason he was the 8th wide receiver off the board in the NFL draft, you know?
That is, you guys are pretty ahead of market on most of the Giants, right? I thought I heard Leone say that.
Definitely Neighbors. Yeah, and Hyatt and Slayton we have as just like projectable volume bets, but I don't always take them. And, you know, I try to swing more because I already have solid wide receiver rooms mostly by the time it gets to that Hyatt and Slayton range.
Thank you, Dees. Yes, fun lineup today. If you guys are new, I do a solo draft. I draft with Roto Viz, Shawn Siegele, the BBM3 champ, Pat Kerrane, and then been rotating this 4th guest slot. Love having Levitan on. If you guys are new to Underdog somehow, and you're not one of the 12 badges in this room who aren't already on Underdog, spending every last waking second of their life drafting, you can get up to a $250 deposit match with promo code Pete. So if you put in 500, I think is where they cap it off. You get $750 total there in your account after that match. Levitan, we got the 1462. How many best ball teams do you think you will have drafted when the season starts? What kind of sicko level are we looking at?
Yeah, so mostly I'm doing like for practice now, and then I'm pretty convinced that the best time for me personally to draft is like late August, September, as close to season as possible, just for digesting information better than opponents, and also just having casuals in there, not doing the kind of stuff that we see here now. So mostly just practicing with low stakes stuff now, and then probably we'll start hitting, you know, the 500 and the 1K and the 555 on DraftKings and the 333 and all those in August, September. So yeah, I'll end up with, I don't know, 100, 150 teams total maybe, but probably the majority of money will be on like 20 or 30 of those.
Do you find yourself making pretty big shifts in the super small field stuff compared to the larger stuff?
Oh, way more likely to go 3 late tight end, way more likely to go 3 late quarterback, way more likely to not worry about week 17 correlation at all. Like tons of adjustments for small field for sure.
Yeah. All right. We are about to pick here. The chat was also talking about the likely stuff with going the second tight end. I actually think likely is the exact kind of guy that I really only want to do in 3 tight end builds. Like I don't want to take a 0 from him, even with an elite tight end for most of the year. Adam, this looks like the spot to grab a Raven here.
I would be fine with Bateman. Yeah, I think Bateman over likely for sure. And then probably quarterback, right? Either Baker or Gino.
I think that's the play. Bateman goes.
Oh, no.
We can we can probably push Geno. If there's a second guy we want to get here, I don't mind getting sniped on Bayman. I think we can grab Walker later if we want.
Yeah.
Who do you think we go with here? Do you want to lock up a quarterback?
Yeah. Well, I have no idea what else we can even do. So right now, so yeah, take whichever. I'm fine with Geno.
Yeah, we've made such a big investment with JSN and Lockett. Really, the only question is, could you just push him a few more picks? The drafter behind us didn't have any Seahawks, but I didn't see anything screaming at us. So might as well just lock that up.
Let me see wide receiver and
Look,
I'm fine with Michael Wilson, and I like Jalen McMillan too, but he's ADP is a little bit later.
Yeah. I honestly don't mind reaching. I feel like we have such a veteran heavy room that I don't mind starting to reach to get some of our rookies here if you like McMillan a good bit.
I mean, I think McMillan's ADP is going to get into the 170s before long at all.
Yeah. And I love doing this stuff where it's like, okay, we're not taking both Geno and Baker. We can only have one, but doesn't mean we can't double stack both of those offenses. So getting Evans with McMillan, we don't need the third quarterback to make that work.
Yeah. 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 I mean, if Jaden Daniels hits, man, it's gonna be crazy because people are gonna get Dotson and McCaffrey so late. And the only guy that I think is being completely overdrafted on the Commanders is Eckler and McLaurin. But if Jaden Daniels hits, they could both pay off easily too. So yeah.
Are you in on Ben Sinnott then?
Not unless I have Daniels. I think Sinnott's like one of the worst picks in the draft if you don't have Daniels. Like I don't. People have lost their. Sinnott wasn't even like that great of a prospect. I understand he got second round draft capital, but from kind of a donkey-ish team and with a rookie quarterback, it's just I think people have been Laporta pilled way too hard on rookie tight end. It would be pretty rare, but I feel like we've beaten back that Ben Sinnott ADP a lot. When it started, we were like 50 spots below on Sinnott, and now it's getting closer.
Yeah, 172, your guys' ranks at 184. He does regularly fall if the Jaden Daniels drafter isn't prioritizing him.
Yeah.
And it is like, it's so funny because we're going to do this thing again with Zach Ertz where it's like he derailed the start of McBride's season last year. And then he got hurt, right? And then McBride really got unleashed. So it's like, if you removed Ertz from the equation, I do think it would be closer to like a wheels up, but Ertz is going to be an issue, at least early on.
Oh, there's no doubt. Coaches love playing Zach Ertz. I mean, it's crazy.
This is a good question. I haven't taken a lot of Dotson. LBM asking, do you like Dotson or McCaffrey more at cost?
Yeah, I like Dotson more. I think they're going to continue to give him chances. I understand that it's been ugly for Jahan Dotson. Still believe in the talent. I know Harmon's done some stuff on Jahan Dotson being able to play still also. So I'm not giving up on Jahan Dotson. Last year, he was going in like round 6 or 7. I mean, now he goes like 130s regularly.
Yeah, this is also, I keep forgetting the connection, Cliff, with Ertz.
That's the thing about the Commander stuff. Like Cliff is going to fuck this up. He's just, unless Jaden Daniels is like actually awesome. And if he is, he's going to smash. I think Cliff's going to just a total donkey.
Yeah, when you think about like the offenses you really want to make like huge team level bets on, I am like a little more gun shy about the Commanders. It's like, just give me a skinny stack with Jaden Daniels and just hope for the best.
Yeah. I mean, you can just do Daniels Dotson and that's it, or Daniels McCaffrey and that's it.
Yep. All right. We are about to pick here at 16-10. We got 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 7 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. I honestly think we should lock up Devontae Walker. Otherwise, we're going to get fully shut out from a stack.
I can't believe this guy. Who's Bop? Show yourself. Yourself,
he's
Bop.
Just trolling. Yeah. I think I don't see anything else to prevail us or to keep us from not just getting at least one stack here. I guess I should ask, are you doing any of the Keaton Mitchell stuff?
No. So at this time of the year on the injured guys, I try to be more careful. Like the data is so clear about how many active players you have with your EV. If you guys read Leone's article, like having 18 active guys in the playoffs is the #1 correlation to having more EV. And so at this time of year, I'm so petrified of taking zeros that guys like Keaton Mitchell, I'm just, if he ends up beating me by a few rounds in closing line to ADP, I can live with that. If he has some great camp reports or something, I can live with that. But so, yeah, I'm real careful on those guys.
Braelon Allen's the top running back in the ranks, and by ADP, we could there's the Giants wide receivers. Who do you like?
Braelon Allen is. I take Braelon Allen like every time.
I love Braelon here. I thought like there was the pretty clear news that, he had, solidified himself as the 2 on the depth chart. He had moved up initially, but now he's just still kind of like chilling. He hasn't been a super steam candidate, and I love him as our RB5 here.
I mean, Braelon Allen bet is not that dissimilar from a lot of the guys that go 3 or 4 rounds earlier. He just has to clear Izzy Abanikanda and Isaiah Davis. And I mean, based on OTA reports, which doesn't mean much, but based on OTA reports, he smashed those guys. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, for now, Braelon Allen is the exact kind of running back that I want.
Yeah, I like how this team shook out. We definitely were veteran heavy early, but we're starting to load up on some rookie upside. I think positionally, Lamar Gino, perfectly good quarterback room. Ingram Kmet, perfectly good tight end room. And then got the 5 running backs, 8 wide receivers. I think you could make a case for basically any position for our final pick. Do you have a lean positionally?
When I have Lamar, I really try to keep it to 2. I would probably say running back, wide receiver, or tight end. Let me look at.
Yeah, and we don't even have any other stack possibilities. It'd be like if you had a Minshew love there or something, but otherwise it's probably.
One other point I wanted to make is that at this time of the year in early July 1st, I mean, we're pretty sure what the depth chart is going to look like at tight end and quarterback. I'm trying to build bigger running back and wide receiver rooms because we're not exactly sure with the depth chart on Dontez Walker or Braelon Allen or Jalen McMillan, all that stuff. We're not exactly sure what it's going to look like. So try to be beefier at running back and wide receiver this time of year. But by the end, especially on DraftKings, I'll have 3 quarterback and 3 tight end on most of my teams.
Yep. Yeah. And I think I've been in that spot recently. And like, if I have a really obvious stack, then I don't mind doing the 3. Like I had a team earlier this morning where I had 2 QBs, but I had Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin and Javonte Williams. It's like, I'm tacking on Bo Nix here.
Yeah.
I do think we could make a case for running back or wide receiver here, although not too many appetizing wide receiver names.
Yeah. And the receiver names for me, I don't know if they've gone, would be Dortch, Tolbert, Noah Brown, Elijah Moore, Tillman, Yosevich, especially in BBM where I'm trying to get guys who may not be drafted all the time. I'd consider one of those, but
I have not done a Noah Brown share, although he's a week 17 opposite our Ravens. What's your thought on him? Just good. And if one of those wide receiver gets hurt, it's back to normal.
When Noah Brown was healthy last year, he was actually leading the team in routes and he had some explosive games. I mostly only take him in Stroud stuff, but if you think you need wide receiver, I think it's okay. Nothing exciting. I'd probably take Jalen Tolbert ahead of him more.
Let's see here. I'm going to just put Brown in the queue. I believe, Tolbert's gone. Dortch is gone. I guess that other ADP fallers like Tyler Boyd. But Brown seems fun from a little correlation angle. I have not selected him yet. I'm down to take a flyer on him.
Okay, yeah. And the only other wide receiver I mentioned was the Yosevich stuff, but that's the Yosevich stuff is a bet on Jermaine Burton kind of not being ready yet. But yeah, I think Yosevich is interesting, and I think should be a fixture of some of your Burrow stacks. Let's go ahead and grab Brown on this team.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's a pure kind of contingent play, but it's nice to have the confirmation of we already know what Noah Brown on the field in this offense looks like. So here's the team, Levitan. It's in the books. 2592, Lamar and Gino, running backs, Barkley, Tony Pollard, Chase Brown, Ty Chandler, Braelon Allen, wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, JSN, Lockett, Jacoby, McMillan, Devontae Walker, and Noah Brown, tight end, Evan Ingram, and Cole Kmet. I think this worked out pretty well. I was scared of the Avalanche, but I think we navigated it.
Yeah, the Avalanche stuff was fine. I think that the not having Lamar really stacked with anyone viable is tough. But there's a narrower way to win, I think, but still a way to win at least. So yeah.
Awesome. Mr. My guy, TM Longacre, sending on over a super chat. He wanted to know if you would take a look at his team here. Let me refresh. We'll do a quick team review. and then I am going to go to the bathroom.
Jesus,
it's been a long show.
They pay you $10 to review their team. We're charging $39 for the entire offseason of best ball content. They're paying $10 for one review. From
It's even better, Adam. They're paying me $10 for you to review their team.
We gotta raise our prices, man. Jesus Christ, this is out of control. $10 for a team review.
Here it is. I'm going to kick my feet up. This is the team. Give him your grade. Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert, JT, Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle, Tyler Algier, and Damian Pierce. Cut candidate. Yikes. Wide receiver, AJ Brown, Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Joshua Palmer, Brandon Cooks, Wan'Dale Robinson, Greg Dortch, DJ Chark, and then Jake Ferguson and Cade Otton. Any notes here, Adam?
Can I see his whole team at once? Is that possible, or is that not possible?
I could try to zoom this out here and see if I.
What do you think about two quarterbacks with the same bye? I almost never ever do that.
I try to avoid it. Yeah, I would have tried to avoid it here. I think it's really hard to take that. With these two guys, 20+ point hit.
Right, and on an underdog, quarterback is such a big part of your scoring. To take a 0 there for a week, I think is tough to handle for me. But I do think that Justin Herbert stuff is like jump the shark. In other words, the Chargers are going to be very run heavy, but Justin Herbert, I think, can still be efficient, and there's still gonna be like reasonable volume. So I do think that the Justin Herbert stuff is not as bad as maybe people make it out to be. And yeah, I like Palmer. Chark, I think, is a good last round pick there. Where did he take? Oh, he has AJ Brown and Hurts.
I think my criticism is I would have gone a third tight end instead of a 9th wide receiver. I think Jake and Cade Otton is just like, I don't know, for me, a little fringy for a 2 tight end build.
Yeah. And DJ Chark was his last pick. He probably just wanted to get some. He didn't have any other correlation with Herbert, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, he had Palmer already. Yeah. So you could have certainly gone tight end there. One tight end, I think that, I don't know if he went in this draft. Like, what if Jawan Johnson, who we had ranked in at 180 or 170 or something? Yeah. What if he's back for week 1, and then you get a third tight end there with that team that I think can make some sense.
Yeah, he did. He has been going undrafted in this room. People are on it. He went at 198. But yeah, that seems like an irrational fall relative to like the news and the actual injury.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got to say this review was not worth $10. Can I refund whoever that was?
Yes, you can refund him for the money you didn't receive to do that review. Let the people know what else you guys got going on in your best ball package. Obviously ranks for all the different sites. What else?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're playing best ball, I thought we should have made the price more. We didn't know how much interest there was in a best ball specific package, but so it's $39.99. We update the rankings literally every day, and like everybody from our team is chiming in saying where we should be changing the inputs, not necessarily the rankings, but the inputs on all these players. What should Andre Yoshevich's chances of supplanting Jermaine Burton be? What should his target share be, et cetera? So we're really on top of all that, updating constantly if you want to have the most up-to-date rankings based on what we think. And then more importantly, you guys are all YouTube bros. We're on YouTube. We are doing tons of YouTube content also. So if you're into the YouTube stuff, check it out. Establish the Run YouTube.
Good stuff. And yeah, great to have Silva back on the pod. If you guys missed that, they were running through some training camp news, all that good stuff. And yeah, the team over there doing great work. And if you guys missed it as well, Leone's been updating his best ball breakfast manifesto, some really good stuff there. So yeah, all kind. Yeah.
I have one more question. Have we heard from the best ball brunch guy yet this year?
I think he did pop up in some Twitter mention of mine that he was working on another film. I don't know if it was best ball related. He might be pivoting to a different industry, having not received the outpouring of love he expected.
It's so funny because I kept like remembering his team last season. I'd be like, damn, They had made a good pick there, but granted to some injuries, and I was rooting for them to win it.
That's why there's the old adage, no one cares about your fantasy football team unless you drafted it simultaneously to recording a sex tape. Then everyone will care and remember it. Yes, I too know that he had Nick Chubb and Adam Thielen on that team.
Yeah, he ran bad. The Nick Chubb injury, he ran bad.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Bindles, for the membership. I'm going to get out of here. Abbreviated week this week with the 4th of July, but I'm going to have a new video out on the Deposit Kingdom YouTube channel later this week, looking at the discounted players in drafts, whether for suspension or injury risk, and kind of going one by one on how to approach those in drafts. Thank you again to Adam, of course, Shawn, and Pat, as always, to the chat. Mr. giving out some subs here. You guys are the best. And yeah, I'm going to go verify that Will Levis tape and make sure it's actually him. For Adam, for Shawn, for Pat, I'm Pete. We'll see you guys.